Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 81, Origin Beast Battlefield. After Yuan Zi returned to his residence, another, him, was also allowed to enter and soon arrived here. When the two exchanged identities, the disguise was unveiled. It turns out that the fake, Yuan Zi, was actually the clone left by Astra in the control room, carefully created with the help of the brain waves of Yuan Zi's second nervous system. What's even more amazing is that Astra has successfully hacked into the entire city's system, cleverly integrating various visual elements such as screens and lights in the city to perfectly replicate another self. But he did not want to rely on his second self to escape this battle. He had already been warned of the small and medium-sized beast tides, not to mention that there were two extremely powerful bosses in charge. However, the sudden outbreak of the epidemic in YN01 has made the conventional defense force seem a little weak. The high-level source beast may have noticed this and took the opportunity to send the Legion leader to test it. Yuan Zi thought so, and then stepped out of his residence and climbed up the city wall step by step, exuding a fierce fighting spirit. The flame of revenge burned in his eyes, and he clenched his fists, as if he wanted to smash the endless army of source beasts with one punch. I still remember the 3 times I experienced the beast tides. I was well protected by others and didn't have the chance to face the battlefield. But now I stand on the battlefield of the source beasts for the first time. Today is their time to pay back. The snowflakes in the sky and the dust on the ground mixed together, as if playing a prelude to the upcoming battle. Yuan Zi looked around and saw countless source beasts rushing in like a flood. They ran wildly, shaking the earth. Seeing humans, their eyes flashed with hunger and madness, which added to their cruelty. They charged forward recklessly, as if they wanted to devour humans completely. Small long-range missiles whizzed out first, ruthlessly harvesting the charging source beasts in front. After several rounds of bombing, the number of source beasts dropped sharply. However, the missiles' attacks gradually became ineffective. They were interfered by the electromagnetic source beasts, and they flew around in the air like headless flies, and finally crashed into rocks and trees powerlessly. The explosions continued, but they no longer posed a threat. The medium-range source weapons opened fire immediately, and the exaggerated firepower coverage once again caused a large number of casualties. However, a group of source beasts with defensive capabilities quickly opened their shields and force fields, blocking all the ammunition during the charge. At this moment, a large number of source warriors stepped forward. They held long-range weapons, provided fire support, and covered their companions. The source power danced in their hands, and the bullets bypassed friendly forces and accurately hit the enemy. The medical soldiers fired source power supplies to provide treatment for friendly forces. Among the hundreds of thousands of troops, half were logistical medical and long-range support gunners. The close combat source warriors who fought against the source beasts head-on, whether they were from martial arts halls, training camps or the military, were the elite among the elite. The military has mobilized a large number of source warriors this time, but their levels are strictly limited to those below the peak level. Because if high-level source warriors join the battlefield, it will be a massacre for these low-level source beasts, and other source warriors will find it difficult to get the opportunity to practice actual combat. The battlefield changes rapidly, and various abilities are intertwined. If you are careless, you will fall into an irreversible situation. But it is this cruel battle that sharpens the will and ability of every source warrior. A source beast suddenly spread its wings, and its wings were covered with complex circuits, flashing a cold light. With a roar from the source beast, the circuits on its wings activated instantly, emitting laser beams that intertwined into a deadly light net, attacking Yuans, cutting all creatures on the path without distinguishing between friend and foe. Countless broken limbs, bodies and blood flew across the battlefield. Another liquid metal-like source beast passed through the light net unscathed, and could deform and flow at will. The moment it was cut, the source beast's body instantly split into several small liquid metal balls, sometimes gathered into a huge metal fist to hit the source, and sometimes dispersed into countless spikes to shoot at the source. However, just as Yuan Zi was exhausted from dealing with the situation, an invisible source beast approached quietly, trying to launch a fatal attack. However, Yuan Zi, with his keen sense of source power, discovered the trace of the source beast in time. He instantly released a powerful source force shock wave, forcing the invisible source beast out of its hidden state, revealing its abdomen and killing it with one blow. Yuan Zi's battle suit was damaged in the fierce battle, but he had no time to care about it at the moment. He stared at the liquid metal source beast, looking for flaws. Finally, he found the weakness of this source beast: high-frequency vibration. He quickly adjusted the source power output, created a high-frequency vibration light blade, and cut through the defense of the liquid metal source beast with one blow, killing it with one blow. The source beast in the sky was hit by countless source force bullets from other source warriors and fell headfirst. Before the other source beasts rushed over, he quickly picked up the pieces of the battle suit on the ground and covered the torn part. Countless nanomaterials began to self-organize to repair the battle suit and wrapped Yuan's wound as well. Astra, how's the damage to the suit? 8% damage. Don't worry. I will remind you if we can't sustain the battle. Before Astra finished speaking, Yuan-Zi could sense the dangerous atmosphere around him. High-tech Yuan beasts appeared quietly, locked their eyes on Yuan-Zi, and launched a joint attack. Each scale of one of the giant lizards was like a photovoltaic panel, perfectly absorbing and storing light, making it nearly invisible. It opened its mouth and spewed out a high-energy ion beam, ionizing the surrounding air, forming a lightning storm that flew towards Yuan's. At the same time, another translucent source beast flashed out, and it seemed to contain a complex quantum computing system. It released entangled photon beams, tightly binding Yuan's in a cage of light, unable to move. The most bizarre source beast had a mouth like a black hole, and the powerful gravitational waves gushing out of it tried to pull Yuan's and the light cage to the center of the lightning storm and swallow them completely. Faced with this desperate situation, Yuan's could only increase his defense to the limit and try to withstand this fatal blow. At this critical moment, Zhang Cheng suddenly appeared and cut the source beast that released the photon beam into 2 pieces with one knife. The light cage disintegrated instantly, and Yuan's was able to break free. Yuan-Zi, who was facing the siege of so many source beasts for the first time, felt very thrilling. If he was not careful on the battlefield, he would fall into an irretrievable situation. If Zhang Cheng had not rescued him in time, he would have fallen to the ground. Yuan-Zi decided to change his strategy, to capture the leader first. He analyzed the weaknesses of each source beast, killed them one by one, and slowly moved to the outer edge of the battlefield. Astra paused for a moment, understanding what Yuan-Zi meant. Do you want to challenge the leader of the Yuan beast army directly? Only in this way can the battle be ended quickly. Okay, I'll help you find it and see where it is. Chapter 82 Assassination I. The people around him were so focused on the battle that they had no time to notice Yuan-Zi running to the edge of the battlefield. However, Commander Chu Lan, who was watching the battle from a distance, frowned. For a Yuan warrior, escaping from a battle was considered a great shame. Lu Zhengxi. Commander Chu Lan shouted angrily to the person in charge of the elite training camp mission next to him, what's the name of that kid in the elite training camp? On the battlefield, this kind of behavior will be executed on the spot by the supervisor. The person in charge looked unhappy, not only dissatisfied with Chu Lan's anger, but also disappointed with Yuan-Zi's actions. However, he chose to remain silent and did not immediately answer Chu Lan's question. Commander Chu Lan was about to get angry again but was interrupted by Commander Chen Shuai. Let's watch first. Commander Chen Shuai said in a steady tone, we are not fighting on the battlefield, so we need to stay calm. Besides, I believe in Sun Ziyuan's vision, and his friend Yuan-Zi will definitely not be much worse. Hearing Commander Chen Shuai's advice, Commander Chu Lan took a deep breath, and the anger on his face was gradually replaced by calmness. He nodded, indicating that he understood what Commander Chen Shuai meant. At the same time, Lu Zhengxi also specially dispatched a stealth drone to closely monitor Yuan-Zi's movements. They stared at the screen, not daring to slack off, wanting to witness with their own eyes what kind of strength this young man would show in the next battle. In a secluded place far away from the noisy battlefield, Yuan's, relying on Astra's precise guidance, flexibly took a shortcut and quietly arrived at the rear position of the extraordinary source beast. He used the same trick again, cleverly mixing the forest lizard's toxin into the air, and then with the help of a gust of east wind, sent all the toxins into the source beast's temporary command post. The location of this command post was chosen with great care, cleverly utilizing an area naturally rich in source magnetite ore. The natural energy emitted by these minerals formed a powerful shielding field, blocking human detection and making the command post as difficult to detect as if it were invisible. However, it is this unique geographical advantage that provides a perfect opportunity for Yuan-Zi's poisonous plan. Yuan-Zi activates the source power with some magnetism, so that this gust of poisonous wind will quickly spread silently to every corner. He leaned against a big tree, quietly watching the guards at the door fall one by one, secretly rejoicing in his heart, and carefully explored the interior of the command post bit by bit. Those source beasts below the peak level had completely lost their combat effectiveness and were lying on the ground dying, and although the peak level source beasts could resist the poison a little longer, they were already at the end of their strength under the continuous erosion of the toxin, and their combat effectiveness was completely depleted. Who is it? The extraordinary source beast that was resting with its eyes closed suddenly became alert. However, the poison had already quietly accumulated in its body, gradually eroding its defenses. It is not surprising that this extraordinary source beast can speak. For a source beast that has been promoted to extraordinary level, it already has a certain level of intelligence, so it is normal for it to use human language. At this moment, Yuan-Zi had carefully circled behind it, ready to take advantage of its unpreparedness and deliver a fatal blow. After all, the poison had greatly weakened its defense capabilities. However, the transparent source beast was still keenly aware of Yuan-Zi's presence and swung its tail violently towards him. Yuanzi reacted quickly and immediately retreated. Suddenly, the lynx, which looked like a big cat in front of him, jumped up and faded out of the space. Yuanzi's heart tightened, and he immediately activated the overclocking function of the gene chip, forcibly raising himself to the peak level. Facing this elusive source beast, if you are not careful, you may fall into an irretrievable situation, even if it is now in a poisoned state. Not only did you fail to assassinate him, but you became the prey instead. Astra said with a hint of teasing in his tone. Stop messing around, help me analyze it. I feel like this ability has been recorded in some alien civilizations. Don't worry, this is the first time this kind of source beast has been recorded in my database. I have to collect data first. I don't have that much time. Before Yuan's could finish his words, the transparent lynx suddenly appeared from nowhere and went straight for Yuan's throat with its mouth open. He subconsciously crossed his arms and activated the defensive force field, barely blocking the fierce attack. However, Yuan's felt several bursts of severe pain in his waist and abdomen, and was knocked back and hit the cave wall. There were deep claw marks on his battle suit, and some parts were even torn open. The moment the lynx slapped Yuan's away, it also revealed a brief flaw. Yuan seized this opportunity and kicked it hard in the head. The lynx grabbed the ground with its 4 feet, making a harsh, sizzling sound of metal cutting, and rubbed backwards for a long time before it stabilized its body. Humans are indeed human. Their combat intelligence is much higher than those low-level source beasts. They first use poison, then sneak attack, and even find opportunities to counterattack during my attacks. You're not bad either. Yuan's lowered his mask, spat out the blood that was about to come up in his throat, and without further ado, he took out his phase gun and fired at the lynx source beast that was temporarily unable to defend itself. The lynx knew that it could not resist under the firepower, so it could only dodge the bullets flexibly and look for opportunities to fight back. The two of them started a chase around the winding passage in the cave. Whenever the lynx tried to hide behind a boulder or a corner, Yuan's remained alert and did not chase it rashly. Instead, he moved slowly along the wall of the cave to reduce the risk of being attacked. Its ability is confirmed. This is a changeling lynx, which has the rare ability to simply utilize space. This ability comes from a unique organ in its body, the space gland. This mysterious gland can trigger dimensional resonance of the string, thereby creating tiny spatial cracks, allowing the phantom lynx to jump freely and briefly in spatial cracks within a certain range. What's even more amazing is that this space gland can also generate and control a special kind of source force foam. These bubbles exist at the wonderful intersection of the microscopic and macroscopic worlds, and evenly cover the entire body of the phantom lynx, closely connecting it with the nearby space. This foam can not only wrap up the space cracks and stabilize their existence, but also allow the phantom lynx to move freely in it without being noticed by the outside world. Where's the weakness? Yuan's looked to the sides and front vigilantly, fearing that it would suddenly jump out and attack. Superstring locking technology. What is this? Yuan's was stunned and felt a little confused by this unfamiliar term. Chapter 83 Assassination Part. Astra was helpless. Humans haven't even mastered the theory of this technology, let alone used it. Without a clear theory that humans can understand, you can't imitate it with source power. Yuan's thought for a while and came up with an idea. Astra, can you lend me your deep learning model? Of course you can, but in the current situation, how can you find the time to learn? Even if you are in a flow state and use deep learning mode, it will be difficult for you to master this hard technical theory in a short period of time. No, I don't intend to learn this theory. Yuanzi said as he nimbly dodged the attack from the left, flipped over and lightly jumped behind a boulder to hide. Just find a way to interfere with him using the source force foam to fill the gap. Okay, it's up to you. To the lynx's astonishment, Yuan's actually opened his heart without fear, leaned against the boulder, and sat in front of it calmly. It felt very confused, as it had never seen such a bold human being who dared to face it in this way. The lynx paced back and forth in front of Yuan's. Based on its understanding of humans, it knew there must be something fishy going on. It guessed that the guy must be waiting for it to get close before suddenly unleashing a powerful move. Humph, cunning human, I won't be fooled. In order to guard against possible surprise attacks from Yuanzi, the lynx entered stealth mode again. At the same time, it also took the opportunity to expel the suppressed toxins in its body in order to restore its extraordinary defense capabilities. In its view, once it regained its strength, this guy would be nothing more than a lamb to be slaughtered. Astra witnessed this scene and could not help but admire Yuanzi's courage and strategy. Everything was as he expected, and it seemed that he had successfully grasped the psychology of the source beast. The next step is to compete in the speed of detoxification and learning. If he can master new skills, he can turn the tide of the battle. On the contrary, if the source beast can detoxify faster, it will undoubtedly put himself in an irretrievable situation. What's going on? Deputy Commander Chu was very curious as he looked at the footage that Yuanzi had just sent back. Haha, it seems that this guy has launched a sneak attack on the Beast Tide's base camp. Commander Chen smiled slightly and sipped his tea leisurely. I've noticed that, but this cave is littered with corpses of top-level source beasts, and their deaths were tragic. How on earth can he, a Rongtong-level source warrior, do all this? Deputy Commander Chu frowned, obviously surprised at Yuanzi's strength. Lu Zhengxi carefully observed the corpse of the source beast on the screen, and after thinking for a moment, he said, I guess he should have unlocked the gene lock in advance. In recent years, I don't know if there have been any changes, but more and more people can unlock their gene locks in advance. There are dozens of them in the training camp alone. That's true. Both commanders nodded. Look at the front battlefield, aren't there several such examples? Zhang Cheng from our training camp is even more of a genius. He unlocked the gene lock that controls the quantum field around his body at the Rongtong level. Even most extraordinary level students are no match for him. However, I am more optimistic about this young man who is determined to capture the leader first. Commander Chen put down his teacup and stared at Yuanzi on the screen. He's really interesting. Yuanzi quickly understood the ability of the shapeshifting lynx. It maintained the source force bubble in the space rift. Through the electromagnetic wave manipulation of the nerves, it would continuously consume its source force, and the quantity was very limited. Currently, it could only maintain about 4 to 5 at the same time. In other words, as long as these points and their changes are marked, all its attacks can be traced. And its stealth ability is actually to hide itself in these bubbles, avoiding all detection equipment. Yuanzi took out the phase gun and shot out the source force activated into waves. He used the source force to change the phase of space, causing the phase of the location where the space rift existed to fluctuate briefly. It's there. Yuanzi's light blade swept over, causing ripples in the unstable space and forcing the Phantom Lynx out. What a great guy. The Phantom Lynx tried to delay the final detoxification time by praising Yuanzi, you are really awesome. Before it finished its words, Yuanzi's light blade had turned black, and he rushed forward and started a close combat with the lynx. Unexpectedly, the lynx did not choose to retreat, but deliberately exposed its weakness. Yuanzi took the opportunity to ride on the lynx, and no matter how it struggled, it could not get rid of it. No matter how Yuanzi shook it, it was of no use and he was cut hard by the light blade several times. The cut blood vessels were oozing purple blood, which finally caused it to feel pain, causing it to burst out with even greater strength, finally throwing Yuanzi off. Ha ha ha, you've fallen into my trap. The lynx shook its head violently, splashing bright red blood all over the place. This is my real plan. Now my toxins have been completely eliminated. They knew very well that even if they were facing a source beast of this ability, even if they were determined to leave, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would be unscathed, let alone a source beast of only Rongtong level. Unexpectedly, Yuanzi was not nervous at all. He even raised his eyebrows and said sarcastically, "Oh. You are going to take advantage of the situation. Alright." The lynx entered stealth mode again and disappeared into the cave. Crack. The surrounding space shattered and exploded like a mirror as Yuanzi exhaled lightly. Yuanzi, who activated the force field in advance, did not suffer any substantial damage, but his battlesuit was torn a lot by the shattered space. He stood quietly in place, watching the space in front of him reorganize bit by bit. The lynx struggled to escape from the space, covered in blood. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. The healing space was like an invisible blade, directly cutting off its 3 hind legs. Suddenly, blood gushed out from the artery, and even the source of power could not stop the surging blood flow in time. Ah! Screams rang out in the cave, and the echoes kept hitting its own eardrums. Even the 3 people separated by the screen could feel the misery that was coming towards them. Yuanzi had already seen through the intentions of the Phantom Lynx. He knew that once the source beast recovered its extraordinary defense, his weapons would not be able to harm it. Therefore, it would definitely try its best to find an opportunity to recover to its complete form in advance. Then, all of Yuanzi's actions would be used by it, so it would be better to follow it. I also injected the dark energy fusion, fear, into its nerves that controlled the bubbles. As expected, after recovering, the Phantom Lynx will use its ultimate ability, the terrifying, Space Blade, in order to achieve an instant kill effect and eliminate future troubles. At this time, fear is used to interfere with the nerves that use its abilities, causing the bubbles to become disordered and unable to stabilize the space, causing the space with cracks to be detonated. How did you do it? Yuanzi couldn't bear it, so he stabbed it through the heart, wanting to send it directly to see God. He saw that the Phantom Lynx's eyes were still flashing, as if it was holding its last breath and unwilling to let go, so he leaned over. I had already predicted that you would predict mine. Today's third update. Chapter 84 Assassination Part. These words seemed to have some kind of magic power, which instantly extinguished the light in the shapeless lynx's eyes. Its body completely lost its vitality and lay quietly on the ground. The three people outside the screen watched Yuan's grope out the source crystal from the heart of the source beast, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. They were all impressed by Yuan's courage and carefulness. Such an ingenious design to kill a source beast far beyond their own level would be difficult even for the three experienced source warriors. Suddenly, the image on the screen began to shake violently, the colors twisted and changed, and flickered in a mottled manner. The originally clear lines and images were ruthlessly torn apart and twisted into a bunch of jumping, chaotic mosaics. Then, a piercing noise came from the screen, which was the unique sound of electronic equipment being destroyed. Everyone felt their scalps tighten, as if the destructive force had penetrated the screen and was directly at their faces, like countless steel needles piercing their eardrums. The mosaic blocks seemed to be given life, twisting and jumping wildly, as if they were trying to break free from the screen. Circles of black ripples also began to appear on the edge of the screen. The screen gradually changed from a mosaic to a white screen, and finally, with a deafening roar, the monitoring screen went completely black. At this time, Yuanzi also heard the loud noise coming from the front. He put the source crystal and space gland into his pocket, entered combat state, and stared at the front. It seems like something ahead is destroyed, so I have to hide first. As soon as this thought flashed through Yuan's mind, his heart flow sounded in alarm and a chill came from behind. He saw the flash of a knife from the corner of his eye, and he almost instinctively dodged and ran away. However, the knife seemed to be attracted by some mysterious force, following Yuan's closely and finally piercing his body. Yuanzi gritted his teeth as the pain came, and quickly used his energy to seal the blood vessels at the wound. Then, he pulled out the blade and crushed it with one foot. Who? Yuanzi's voice echoed in the cave, but no one responded. After his attack failed, he disappeared again and blended into the environment, so that even the heart flow could not detect it. Damn, this guy's ability is related to magnetism, otherwise he can't be hidden so well. This is simply his home turf. Yuanzi judged from the strength of the enemy's attack that the opponent was a top-level source warrior. Although he still had most of his source power left, it was obviously unwise to rush into battle against such a mysterious enemy. Run! Yuanzi immediately rushed towards the cave entrance, followed by several more blades rushing towards Yuanzi, their speed obviously much faster than Yuanzi's. At that moment, the blade in front pierced through the battle suit in the force field, piercing the skin. The air seemed to be squeezed, making a hissing sound. After being hit, Yuanzi's speed slowed down immediately. In order to prevent the enemy from taking advantage of the opportunity to attack the vital parts of his back, he used his left foot as the axis and turned flexibly while running at high speed, facing the dozens of blades that followed like a rainstorm. Some of these knives were knocked away by Yuanzi with his amazing reaction speed and strength, but many of them still penetrated his defense. Each penetration was accompanied by a puff sound, as if the air was being pierced. After blocking a round of attacks, Yuanzi continued to run forward. It was obvious that the speed of the blades suddenly slowed down until they completely stopped in the air. This person still hasn't exposed his position, which means he's staying put. The range of his ability in this environment is limited to about 180 meters, and in a weak magnetic environment it's about 100 meters. Astra analyzed the data of the discharge magnetic field outside Yuanzi. His ability in this magnetite environment is undoubtedly equivalent to a larger field, and the range of the field has been amazingly expanded, and can even be further improved. It is an invincible area in the magnetite cave. Yuanzi did not panic because of this. Before he decided to act, he was surrounded by an invisible electromagnetic wave. Such protective measures were particularly important at this moment. The magnetic field of the blade can be keenly captured by his nerves, and then directly handed over to the gene chip and Astra to automatically manipulate the body, greatly reducing the probability of being hit. Yuanzi had the thought of running away, but he quickly rejected it. He knew that here, the enemy not only had the blessing of natural magnetism, but also was far superior to him in level, so running away was futile. After a brief thought, Yuanzi concluded that the enemy would either reveal his position or show a flaw when using his ability, and see what the opponent would choose. So it is very important to learn how to pull. A clear idea guided Yuanzi. He pretended to run in panic, as if he was eager to escape from the cave, but in fact he advanced step by step until he was completely out of the enemy's shooting range. The enemy remained inactive, and this strategic stalemate inadvertently revealed the flaw in his ability. The exit has been blocked by a huge magnet. The only person who can open this door in a short time is the guy who secretly assassinated him. This guy wants to catch the turtle in the jar. He pulled out the blades on his body one by one. His battle suit was already riddled with holes. Blood slowly seeped out from these tiny holes, as if his entire body was soaked in blood. However, Yuanzi did not panic because of this, and mobilized the source power of his body. Under the effect of the source power, the wounds on his body began to heal little by little. As for the toxins attached to the blade, it was not worth mentioning to his body. In order to confuse the enemy, Yuanzi simply pretended to be poisoned and lay on the ground motionless. While absorbing the magnetic source force in the environment, he was thinking about how to deal with this difficult enemy. He understood that his advantage was time. Yuanzi looked at the crushed instrument in the distance. It was a small, exquisite unmanned reconnaissance aircraft. Before entering the cave, he had already noticed the tracking of this reconnaissance aircraft, which showed that he had been closely watched by someone. If the enemy wanted to deal him a fatal blow, they would have to risk exposing themselves. As long as he stayed out of the enemy's range and slowly engaged the enemy would become more and more impatient because they were afraid of the arrival of reinforcements. However, Yuanzi was not going to distance himself from him and engage in guerrilla warfare, because that was just a mediocre idea. In response to his sneak attack, he would kill him head-on. Yuanzi, his position has moved. Let me show you the electromagnetic imaging image, but it only shows the general position. This is enough. He walked confidently to the edge of his range and gradually lured him to the place with the strongest magnetic field in the cave. The curve of Yuanzi's mouth corners gradually became a little crazy, because the enemy didn't know that his greatest reliance was actually his greatest disadvantage. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 85, Initial Formation. Yuanzi stared at the woman on the ground who was gradually turning into ashes due to the explosion, and a sense of regret welled up in his heart. However, Astra did not feel the same way. After the woman died, due to strong magnetic interference, the chip self-destruction program in her suit did not start immediately. Taking this opportunity, Astra quickly hacked into the chip and successfully intercepted some vital information before it self-destructed. It turned out that the woman's name was Wei Manline. She had studied in the top class of Jing'an No. 1 middle school just like Yuanzi, and had also been admitted to the elite training camp. She was considered his senior in the previous class. However, what is even more shocking is that she is actually a multifaceted spy with a complex identity. She is not only an undercover agent planted by the martial arts hall in the training camp, but also a double agent lurking in the martial arts hall in the training camp by the Ghost Epidemic organization, and she even provided intelligence to Washa. From the remaining fragments, she accepted 2 tasks this time: assassinate Yuanzi, and contact Phantom Links. The former was employed by the martial arts hall, and the latter was employed by Washa. The specific mission information has been self-destructed and cannot be traced back. Damn it! Someone actually tipped off Yuan Beast. Yuanzi's mood was extremely complicated. He began to suspect whether some high-level officials were secretly behind the epidemic, and Lin Mahai was probably just their scapegoat. At this moment, Yuanzi felt a vibration coming from the direction of the cave exit. As the vibration gradually weakened, a ray of light came in. Anyone there? Yuanzi responded, then dusted himself off and stood up. Although his suit was severely damaged this time, he had gained a lot and also learned some key information. Good boy, you can actually deal with such a powerful source beast. However, why did we hear an explosion when we opened the door just now? What happened just now? Commander Chen walked over. Later, Yuanzi talked about the battle with the woman afterwards. Yuanzi has been wandering around the edge of her ability range, putting herself in a space where she can attack or defend. Gradually, she came to a place with the strongest magnetic field, which is also where her ability can be best exerted, and her range was increased to 200 meters. With his keen perception, Yuanzi accurately detected the opponent's movement trajectory and skillfully dealt with her. He stepped directly into her territory, facing the rapidly attacking blade. He flexibly dodged, and at the same time used the light blade to draw sparks on the ground, steadily approaching the enemy. Just as Yuanzi expected, the closer he got to the center of the field, the faster the blades would move, and the more difficult it would be to dodge. However, he did not panic. Instead, he used his powerful mental power to release brain waves to sense the movements of each blade. He no longer relied solely on dodging with his boxing moves, but used the brain waves released by his mental power to sense every movement. In this dangerous battle, he cleverly used the enemy's attacks and began to create his own unique body movements. Those originally deadly blades became invisible under his perception. He could hear their whistling sound, feel their cold metallic texture, and even clearly see the force and speed of their attacks. Astra also provided him with strong support at the critical moment. She not only marked the probability of hitting in real time, but also predicted the possible trajectory of the blade. Everything was clearly presented in his mind, like a 3-dimensional dynamic image. This allowed Yuanzi to react more quickly and successfully avoid fatal attacks again and again. His mental power was as flexible and sharp as invisible tentacles, and through the brain waves he released, he was able to perceive the dynamics around him more accurately. His nerves seemed to control his steps autonomously, and he gradually figured out his body movements. It was no longer just a simple dodging, but more like a unique dance with blades as the accompaniment and life and death as the stage. As he got closer to the central area, new scars on his body became less and less common. Astra vaguely saw the face of the enemy. The figure gradually emerged from the darkness. From the outline, it was a slender woman in a tight combat suit. Her forehead was slightly sweaty. Obviously, even in a favorable environment, while deploying the source power on such a large scale and manipulating many knives, it was also greatly consuming the source power in her body. The woman suddenly felt a little afraid of this boy. She controlled all the blades and attacked Yuan's, as if she wanted to kill him in one go. But at this moment, Yuan's was completely immersed in his own world of flow. His spirit was dancing and his will was burning. The blades could only pass by him. Suddenly, a blade cut through Yuan's skin. However, before the woman could rejoice, Yuan's leapt behind her, the blade pointing directly at her throat. She had no choice but to turn around and fight Yuanzi in close combat. However, she was overly dependent on long-range attack capabilities and was extremely unfamiliar with close combat skills. Although her strength and speed exceeded Yuanzi's, the situation was one-sided. He would not show any mercy to an enemy who wanted to take his life. He snapped his fingers, and the ground behind the woman suddenly exploded. Boom boom. The moment the woman was swept by the air wave, she was stabbed by countless blades that suddenly accelerated back. After being severely injured, she was unable to defend against the impact of the explosion and was swept higher by the air wave. It turned out that while Yuanzi was practicing his body skills, he also dispersed the foam in the space gland of the phantom links into the gap in the magnet created by the blade, and used the chaotic space to blast the huge magnet under his feet into opposite magnetic fields at both ends. The instantaneous change of the magnetic poles caused the returning blade to instantly gain a strong acceleration. Just as she turned the blade back to attack Yuanzi, the speed instantly exceeded the limit she could operate, severely injuring herself. When Yuanzi saw her flying backwards, he did not hesitate at all. Source warriors are different from source beasts. The IQ of high-level source beasts may not be able to use many conspiracies and tricks, but humans are completely different. While you are sick, I will kill you. He pushed off the ground with his feet and rushed upwards, using the powerful potential energy of his push to deliver a deadly double-edged sword attack to the woman who was unable to stabilize her body in the air. He directly separated the spherical object on the top from his body and threw it higher into the air. The pair of eyes flashed with an incredible look in the air. He looked down in confusion, watching the body getting farther and farther away from him. It was too late to regret now. Shortly afterwards, the suit activated its self-destruction program, and with a loud bang, the woman's body turned into ashes in the flames. Good. Very good. Excellent. These two battles are truly full of amazing imagination. Yuan's described the battle in such a fascinating way that even Chen Shuai could not help but applaud. And I will keep those secrets in my heart for the time being. Chapter 86 Battlefield. The ground was full of pits and holes, the bodies of the source warriors were scattered all over the place, and the broken bodies of the source beasts covered the entire vast area, making it a devastated place. The surviving origin warriors, whether they knew each other or not, spontaneously gathered into small groups. They found cigarettes and alcohol from nowhere, some passionately recounted their heroic deeds, while others occasionally interspersed some lighthearted jokes. If you ignore the tragic battlefield before their eyes, the smoke and dust on their faces, and the scars on their bodies that have not yet healed, you would never imagine that they would be so nonchalant after the war. Yuan's was lying on the bed, his mind still replaying the scenes he saw yesterday. This reminded him of the time when he first met Rick, and all the misunderstandings disappeared in the experience of hunting the phantom bull. The comradeship that Crowther mentioned may have quietly taken root in this moment of sharing life and death. Yuan's packed up his stuff and followed the notification on his bracelet to teleport to another battlefield without the smoke of gunpowder. Looking inside through the transparent glass, everyone inside was wearing more stringent chemical protective suits. They were either concentrating on the experiments in their hands or rushing around in various laboratories to discuss issues. Yuanzi passed through the many protective doors and finally stepped into the deepest laboratory. This room was surrounded by pure white, and the people standing in it seemed to have lost their sense of direction. The only thing they could do was to look up at the mysterious sphere that was suspended in the air and shining with light. The sphere is surrounded by complex circles of light and flowing code sequences. They seem to have life, constantly replicating and optimizing themselves, silently maintaining the stability and operation of the entire room. This should be the super AI medical diagnostic instrument developed by Dr. Li. Astra noticed Yuan's curiosity and took the initiative to send him the detailed information. It is running the most advanced virtual reality treatment method, and this room is its virtual experimental space. I also felt the unique electromagnetic pulsation of the life resonator. It seems that someone has combined these two things together. Yes, that's right. Dr. Shu's figure slowly appeared from the front. You should have noticed recently that the rate of severe cases of Virus X has stabilized and is no longer rising. This is the result of our efforts. Indeed. Yuan's nodded in agreement. After some communication with Dr. Shu, he had a deeper understanding of how this electromagnetic therapy works. Although it cannot completely cure the patient, it can significantly slow down the deterioration of the disease and buy precious time for the patient. You and Dr. Chen didn't just want me to listen to this, did you? You must have more important progress. Yuan said jokingly. As you said, we have indeed found some clues about the humanoid monster. Dr. Chen's voice sounded slowly, and his figure gradually appeared in front, walking towards Yuan's. What clue? We used the bioresonator to study the lifelike frequency data of many viruses. After entering it into the diagnostic instrument, we finally traced its origin virus. It was a strain from the Nanyang region that mutated. Before the catastrophe, there was only one species that could coexist with it completely. Dr. Chen paused and turned on the large screen next to him, which immediately projected an image of the creature, a primate unique to the original Nanyang FLB region. You mean, we need to go to Nanyang to find the creatures transformed by the mutation source? Yuan's had learned about that area in his geography textbook. Nanyang, that once prosperous land, had become a completely different world after experiencing the Great Cataclysm. That unprecedented disaster completely destroyed the human civilization in Nanyang. Today, nature has reclaimed its lost territory, and the area is swallowed up by dense forests. Islands are dotted like stars in the vast sea, and peninsulas are winding and intertwined with the turbulent ocean. Humans know very little about the subsequent development of this place. It has become one of the areas that humans are most reluctant to set foot in. It is full of unknown dangers and every step is a test of life and death. That's right, Sun Ziyuan. I'm afraid I can't live up to your expectations. There are many family businesses that I still need to run, and I can't take the risk. Yuan's noticed that the muscles on Dr. Shu's face were slightly relaxed and his eyebrows were drooping to the sides. He was obviously a little disappointed with this reasonable result. So, he quickly looked up the information about that kind of primate and found that they were mainly distributed in the remote southern area of the FLB region. According to the satellite source force reaction image, the strongest creatures in this area were only a few scattered beings close to the extraordinary level. Although I cannot go there in person, I can recommend two candidates. Rick from the Sanchez family and my friend Yuan Zi, they are both excellent candidates, and I believe they can be competent for this mission. Then I'll go back and talk to the two commanders. They should be familiar with that area and can give more specific suggestions. Just as Yuan Zi was about to leave the laboratory, he received a message from Li Haisheng. Li Haisheng told him to be careful when he went to Nanyang. There was a special plant in the Nanyang region, and its petals contained several ingredients that could help restore Yuan Tai's memory. Sun Ziyuan, now you're here. I was just about to talk to you about this matter, but after thinking about it, I still feel a little uneasy about sending the two trainees from the training camp you recommended to carry out this mission. Commander Chen spoke very directly this time, and his tone sounded like he did not allow any room for argument. Commander Chen, most Origin warriors are indeed better at fighting, but this operation is rather special. We must have a Origin warrior who is familiar with biology to participate. Otherwise, we may not be able to accurately identify the original body of the creature before the mutation. Commander Chen was silent for a while. He understood what Yuan Zi meant. In such a dangerous environment, researchers who were not Yuan warriors were indeed too vulnerable, and none of the Yuan warriors around him had enough knowledge of biology. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally agreed with Yuan Zi's idea. But he put forward his request in a tone that did not allow for questioning. I can agree to your suggestion, but those two people must bring Coach Weiwa with them. Otherwise, I will never agree. Although Yuan Zi was somewhat helpless, he could only agree to this request. After all, the presence of a Nirvana-level expert would undoubtedly greatly increase their safety in the unknown area of Nanyang. I am not feeling well today, with a headache and dizziness. If there are any mistakes, please leave more comments and bear with me. I will revise it in time when I feel better. Chapter 87, Basics of Beast Taming. Before boarding the plane, Jens was still doubtful, unsure whether Weiwa knew about some of his father's plans against him. If Weiwa really knew, he would undoubtedly be in an extremely dangerous situation. However, through the communication on the plane, he realized that Weiwa seemed to deliberately avoid talking about his family situation. This made Yuan's initially judge that there might be a disagreement between Weiwa and his father. Despite this, he remained vigilant and took some necessary precautions. The two agreed on a rule: Weiwa would not help unless they encountered a supreme beast or other life-threatening situations. This agreement set a clear boundary for the relationship between the two. Seeing Weiwa lying quietly in the cabin with his eyes closed, Yuan's opened the message list. The first thing that caught his eye was the apology message from Rick, who regretfully said that if it weren't for the sudden situation at home, he really wanted to embark on this adventure with Yuan's. He continued to scroll through the screen, checking the messages one by one, occasionally surfing the internet and posting some lighthearted and humorous jokes. Yuan-zi, look at the time. You're still so leisurely. Astra projected herself. This was a new skill she had learned. Only Yuan-zi could see her image. The more tense the moment, the more you need to relax. If you keep tense while doing tasks, you will collapse. Yuan's glanced and motioned Astra to look at the coach. Look, isn't that coach also taking a break? It's just that the way he takes a break is different. As you wish. The plane quickly arrived at the target location, and Yuan's and Weiwa landed smoothly at the designated location. According to the plan prepared in advance, they began to set up infrared trigger cameras and traps in key areas of the forest. This creature is likely to have inherited some of its pre-mutation habits, such as nocturnal nature, and should also have excellent camouflage capabilities. Otherwise, after the mutation, they would have probably become extinct long ago, rather than being encountered by adventurers. One evening a few days later, after several days of intense searching, Yuan's and Weiwa did not achieve much success. Exhausted, Yuan's chose a relatively open cave as his campsite, ready to have a good rest for the night. Soon, everything was immersed in a dream. This was a rare peace after many days of exhaustion. In the dream, he met Ji Xueren again. Her smile was like a spring breeze, warm and peaceful. Suddenly Yuan's felt an itch on his arm. He scratched it subconsciously, turned over and tried to continue meeting her. Then, a subtle and sharp buzzing sound pierced the silence of the night, like an invisible little hand, teasing Yuan's ears. In a daze, Yuan-zi waved his hand, and the voice temporarily stopped for a while. Just as he fell asleep again, the voice became clearer and more arrogant, as if provoking him. Yuan's turned on the lighting function of his battle suit, but as soon as the light came on, the sound immediately disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. He lay down again and closed his eyes. After a while, the voice appeared again, as if mocking Yuan's incompetence. Fuck, I can't stand this anymore. Yuan-zi was really depressed. He had all the skills but was helpless. Its fighting power was almost the same as that of ordinary mosquitoes, except that it had a few more toxins that were ineffective against Yuan-zi. But they have an ability to hide that gives Yuan-zi a headache. Whenever he tries to find their traces, they always manage to evade his search. And Astra is still secretly happy beside him, refusing to help at all. Yuan's finally found where a few mosquitoes were hiding. He grabbed them with his palm and squeezed them hard. When he opened his hand, he found that none of them were killed and they all quickly escaped from his palm. He had no choice but to take out the last bit of lizard venom and use it as an insecticide, but it turned out to be useless. I finally see you get defeated. Astra's projection appeared in the moonlight. She looked at Yuan's with a smirk and said, this is not an ordinary mosquito. Its mouthparts can penetrate your battlesuit and body defenses. It must be at least a high-level fusion-level mosquito. You don't help either. There are many mosquitoes in the South Seas. These mosquitoes are like the nemesis of mankind. Any source warrior who has not reached the scout level will be defeated when encountering mosquitoes of the same level. Under the moonlight, Astra revealed his projection and looked at him with a smirk. Yuan stopped talking to Astra. He gradually calmed down and used his 5 senses to capture the subtle changes in the outside world. He recalled the working principle of the life resonator and the unique, life frequency, of each creature. The concept of this, life induction technique, took shape in his mind, which was similar to the soul induction described in fantasy novels. By synchronizing the life frequency of living things, he could even communicate with the source beasts that had not yet developed their intelligence, thereby achieving the effect of controlling beasts. Whether it is a tiny mosquito, a powerful higher source beast, or even a tiny microorganism, it can be controlled and communicated with in this way. Yuan's mind suddenly became clear. He no longer worried about the specific movements of the mosquitoes. Instead, he used the brainwave magnetic field of his mental power to capture and simulate the life frequency of these mosquitoes. He closed his eyes and used his mental power to cover every corner of the cave. At the moment he entered the flow, he felt that his body was completely transformed into a static frequency, as if it had merged with the entire cave. But it was not easy, because the life frequency of mosquitoes was very weak compared to other creatures. After repeated attempts, he felt a slight fluctuation, but unfortunately it was just a small beetle. After countless attempts and failures, when Yuan's was about to give up, he suddenly caught a subtle tremor in the depths of his soul. His consciousness passed through the endless darkness and finally touched another unknown world. He captured the frequency of a mosquito flying towards him and connected it to his nerves, observing the world from its perspective. He even saw himself in an ethereal state. Yuan-zi's mind moved, and the mosquito changed its flying direction. He manipulated the mosquito and released a special pheromone to attract more mosquitoes to fly in this direction. It's amazing. You can actually play it like this. I want to play this too. Astra, who was neurally connected to Yuan's, was also shocked by this scene. Don't underestimate me. Yuan's came out of this state, raised his eyebrows and gave Astra a look that said, I'm awesome, right? Then he handed over control of his second self's nervous system to Astra so he could get a good night's sleep. Chapter 88 Nanyang Menglian. Yuan slept until the evening of the next day, then slowly opened his eyes. He slept particularly soundly that time. Seeing Yuan's waking up, Weiwa also walked over. The originally rebellious light in his eyes had been covered by fatigue, and thick dark circles surrounded his eyes, as if the haze of the night had not yet retreated. Weiwa, you don't seem to have had enough rest. He yawned, no longer showing off his airs, and waved his hand. It's normal. It's normal to not sleep for several days while doing a mission. This is probably a mosquito bite. The mosquitoes here are quite poisonous. I was tossing and turning for a long time in the middle of the night. Let's not talk about this anymore. What are your plans for today? Yuan's changed his plan and said that he had made an instrument that could communicate with the insects, vision, and all they had to do was find pools of water where insects were densely populated. It shouldn't be dangerous. Just make sure you defend yourself in secret. After saying that, Yuan's controlled a dragonfly and asked Astra to manipulate it to find a water source. Under Astra's guidance, Yuanzi shuttled through the dense jungle. However, a sudden situation made Yuanzi stop. A group of unidentified Yuan warriors appeared in front of him. He didn't break completely on his last step, and stepped on the soft ground, accidentally breaking a dead branch. Crack! The crisp sound of the breaking echoed in the silent night sky, sounding particularly harsh. The group of people immediately put on their thermal imaging equipment and cast a vigilant look in the direction of Yuan's. Who is it? Come out! The leader leaned forward, speaking in an awkward universal language. Yuan signaled Weiwa to hide and not act rashly, and he prepared to negotiate. I am from China, and I came here to look for a source beast. HMPH, you lowly race. Someone snorted softly in neon language. Yuan's also heard that the person next to the team leader was a Japanese. His attitude was very unfriendly and his tone was full of contempt, and the team leader also acquiesced to this ridicule. Judging from the picture taken by Dragonfly, many of them even squatted on the ground holding their stomachs and laughed. This was obviously a Japanese team. Yuanzi, these damn Japanese are cursing at us Chinese, and they are not very strong. Should we deal with them first? There's no need to get into conflict with them. You don't know if there are any experts hiding behind them. It's important to complete our plan first. Other things are not important. Yuan's told Astra not to make any radical decisions, but he already had some plans in mind. He continued to follow the dragonfly to a pond that was not small. It was quiet all around, and it seemed that no source beast dared to approach the water source. When Yuanzi's eyes moved to the other side of the pond, his eyes lit up. At the other end of the pond where the water met the ocean, there grew a plant that looked like a mutated lotus. It stayed there quietly, as if absorbing the light of the moon. The leaves were a warm blue-green color, like emeralds on the seabed, and each leaf was carved with complex patterns, as if containing the ancient secrets of the ocean. The stems were soft and tough, swaying with the flow of the sea water, emitting a faint blue light. This is the plant that Li Haisheng asked him to find, the Nanyang Dream Lotus that has the effect of restoring memory. But it is not that simple, it is just a projection of its body hidden underwater. This projection is its inherent hunting mechanism, which can release weak biophotons and attractive chemical signals to attract potential prey to come closer. The creatures that come into contact with the projection will be affected by its unique bioelectric waves, and become their most beautiful memories. Then they will be attracted to it, and then slowly wrap up the submerged prey in the water and turn it into its own nutrients. Any creature with a nervous system may be affected. For certain species, Humanglian can even manipulate their memories and turn them into servants who protect it. The information that Li Haisheng gave to Yuanzi required him to wait until it bloomed and pick its petals. After the flower bloomed, it would lead to a superclass source beast. Plant-type source beasts would also gain the awakening of self-awareness and the burst of spiritual wisdom when they reached the superclass, but they would not be able to speak. And it was now only one step away from blooming, so Yuan's asked Astra to control the huge Rongtong-class dragonfly to fly above the projection, hover there, and then release the control over it. It seemed to lose control, like a crashed plane, and plunged directly into the water. Then Yi Menglian's tentacles stretched out from the bottom of the water at an astonishing speed, tightly wrapped around the prey, and then secreted a powerful digestive enzyme, and instantly there was no trace of the corpse left. Yuan's personally hunted a few Rongtong-level source beasts and threw them into the pond, and they all turned into nutrients. Its leaves became more translucent, and the patterns became clearer. The source of energy was constantly rising from the underwater roots, dragging the flower buds directly to the surface of the water. The stems swayed gracefully in the gentle sea breeze, emitting a faint blue light that contrasted with the moonlight. Yuan's held his breath and waited quietly for the flower buds to bloom. The petals moved slightly, sliding down from the outside a little by a little. They appeared a light and elegant white, like the skirt of a fairy dancing gently in the moonlight. As the petals unfold, a faint fragrance spreads, making people feel relaxed and happy. The stamens emit a faint golden light, as if the soul inside the flower is quietly awakening. What's your name? Vague words suddenly rang in Yuan's mind, but he did not sense any people or source beasts. I am the lotus you see. Yuan's was a little surprised and didn't know what to say. If it weren't for the nutrients you gave me just now, I don't know how long it would take for me to truly mature, so you can take the petals. The lotus swayed in the pond, communicating with Yuan's in the form of electromagnetic waves. Yuan's flow also felt that its intelligence was like a blank sheet of paper, still in the stage of an ignorant child, and did not seem to understand the blood feud between humans and source beasts. I don't care about your grudges against other source beasts. You deserve this. Yuan's knew that the creature in front of him had the ability to read minds, and his thoughts were completely exposed in front of it, just like Zhang Zisheng's ability of mind net, but he could not control this ability well. The tentacles of the lotus stretched out from the water, tearing off the petals from its own receptacle, and then used the water flow to send them to Yuan's. There are nearly 200 petals here, which should be enough for you. Let me remind you, someone should have discovered that I have blossomed and is heading here. I will give you these, and I will have to fall asleep again for a while, so I can't help you. After saying this, the lotus pointed in a direction with its tentacles and sank back to the bottom of the water. Chapter 89, The Ungrateful Person. Yuan's collected the petals and the man came here to kill him. The instrument clearly detected the signal of the dream lotus blooming just now. Why is it gone here? The man was the Japanese who had provoked Yuan's. He also discovered Yuan's squatting by the pond. You are the Chinese guy just now, right? It was you who did this. I advise you to be smart and hand over the petals. I have killed the Yimeng lotus. Look at this. Yuan's took out a petal from his pocket and waved it in front of him. A trace of greed flashed in the eyes of the Japanese man, like a hungry beast staring at its prey. His eyes were fixed on the petals in Yuan's hand, which was the treasure he had longed for. His breathing was rapid, and his chest was heaving, as if the excitement and greed in his heart had made him unable to control himself. He completely ignored the fact that the mature Yi Menglian was an extraordinary source beast, and also ignored the fact that the young man in front of him was likely a powerful source warrior. There was only one thing on his mind: killing people and stealing treasures. It's the same old cliché of killing people and stealing treasures again. Can you be a little more creative? It would be nice if they could flatter me and then attack me by surprise. Yuanzi was grumbling in his heart, feeling extremely disgusted by this man's behavior. He was simply brainless. He had originally wanted to use a trick to deal with him, but now it seemed unnecessary. Do you want it? I'll give it to you if you come over. Yuanzi used the temptation ability he stole from the old man in white robe for the first time alone. This move really worked, and the opponent's mind was completely confused. He pounced on Yuan's like an out-of-control beast, and even forgot to activate the combat mode of the battle suit. In Yuan's eyes, he was just a lamb to be slaughtered. Suddenly, several spurts of blood appeared on the moon. The moonlight fell on the man, and he was seen struggling and twisting on the ground in pain with his limbs broken. But he still didn't understand why the young man at the Rongtong level in front of him was so strong. His ghostly body movements made him be killed instantly, without any room for struggle. This is what happens when you slander the Chinese people. Yuanzi manipulated the poisonous insects to crawl towards his body. His throat was cut so that he could not make any sound and could only endure the endless pain silently. At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. Why did he covet this credit? Why was he so arrogant? Soon, the only sound in the night was the wind. Yuanzi felt a chill on the back of his head, and a gun was suddenly pressed against his head. He deliberately exposed the ability he stole from Li Ru, so he knew who this was. Are you going to do it? Yuan's tone did not reveal a trace of nervousness, but rather seemed quite calm. He gently put the gun away and turned to face Weiwa. Through the perception of flow, he realized that Weiwa had no real intention to kill, so he concluded that the other party would not dare to act rashly. Stand there and don't move. Answer me a few questions. Weiwa's tone revealed nervousness, which was far from the demeanor of a strong man. Put your gun down. There's no need to be so nervous. A mere Rongtong level warrior like me poses no threat to you. Did I ask you to speak? Weiwa suddenly put away the gun and kicked Yuan's with a swift knee. Yuan's remained calm, not afraid that Weiwa would not kill him. He cleverly used the momentum transfer and the internal strength of his boxing to eliminate the force. There's no deep hatred between us, so why don't we sit down and have a good talk? Yuan sat down with his mouth wide open, exposing his weaknesses to the man. Weiwa hesitated for a moment, but still suppressed his inner impulse and asked, "What is your relationship with my father?" Yuanzi looked at him with a smile and said self-deprecatingly, "Me. I am just your father's abandoned son." As Yuan's expected, Weiwa seemed to have touched some sensitive nerves when he heard these words, as if he felt that he was being implied. He immediately jumped up and pointed at Yuan's. "How dare you say that to me? Oh, how dare I? Weiwa realized that his emotions were being led by a teenager, and he lost his composure again. But he felt powerless, because his father had such a profound influence on him that he was particularly sensitive to these words. You know Coach Jinghua, right? She's my instructor. Weiwa frowned and looked up at the starry sky, as if recalling some not-so-pleasant memories from the past. Yuan's mouth curled up slightly. Weiwa's expression and actions had completely betrayed him. He only needed to wait for Weiwa to struggle out of his memories, and everything would be easy. Boom, boom. Yuan's didn't wait for his answer, but waited for the gunshot. Weiwa reacted faster than him, and threw Yuan's to the ground, using his body to block 2 bullets for him. The Japanese leader came over with his men, saw the bodies on the ground and Yuan's and Weiwa, and fired 2 shots from a distance. Yuan stood up unharmed, but Weiwa, although he did not appear to have serious external injuries, fell into a coma. It turned out to be a good idea not to act rashly at the beginning. The opponent's foreman was also a source warrior who had unlocked the genetic lock, and his strength should not be underestimated. Astra judged that he was a high-level and top-level strong man. How can it be so easy to kill our people? Who can be blamed for this? He wanted to take all the credit and even wanted to kill me, but he was killed because he was not as skilled as me. What does this prove? It only proves that you didn't discipline me well. The leader was so angry at Yuan's words that his face turned blue. He stopped talking nonsense and directly ordered his men to attack. However, to everyone's surprise, facing this seemingly fatal situation, Yuanzi showed amazing strength. He flexibly used his newly learned abilities to gather a large number of insect source beasts. Under Astra's precise control, these source beasts acted like Yuan's right-hand men, causing great trouble to the enemy. At the same time, Yuan's cleverly used the space glands in the process of fighting the enemy, and used the last source force bubble to create a huge space blade. Then he used the power of emotions to briefly control the enemies and strangled them directly in the invisible space. This is the ability of the source beast to fight against source warriors of higher levels. Now it is used perfectly by Yuanzi, creating an even more shocking effect than the last battle against Wei Manline. The foreman was the only one left in the entire team. His face was so pale that it could not be described as livid. He glared at Yuanzi as if he wanted to eat him alive. But he restrained himself. He calculated that the Nirvana-level source warrior could only sleep for a few minutes, and by then he would have no chance of winning. However, Yuan's first showed a look of contempt, then turned his back to him and walked towards Weiwa, completely ignoring the danger behind him. At this moment, the mocked foreman was no longer the calm and rational leader, but a berserker dominated by anger, with only the enemy in his eyes. Just when he was about to succeed in his attack on Yuanzi, he heard a sentence that frightened him: "Don't pretend to be asleep. I know you are not asleep at all." Yuan's took those ghostly steps again, and the foreman saw Weiwa's arrogant and cold face. Right. Before the third Chinese word was uttered, the Japanese foreman fell to the ground, dead instantly. Chapter 90. A moment of thought. You are only one step away from becoming a talent scout. Yuan's witnessed the whole process. The foreman was instantly suppressed by the powerful source power and his life disappeared in an instant. It all seemed so simple and brutal. Combined with Weiwa's previous emotional instability, Yuan's deduced that his problem might be his self-limited mental strength, which prevented him from making any further progress. Indeed, there is only one step left. But having said that, I have to say that you did a great job just now. The battle was impeccable. Weiwa raised his head and looked at Yuan's, meeting Yuan's gaze, but somewhat dodging it. It's all my fault, I lost my composure just now. It's because of my ability. Yuan simply threw out the crux of the problem. The temptation emotion he used was originally part of Li Ru's ability, so it was normal for his son to see through it. Yes, the ability you used at first was my father's specialty. He was very good at using sweet words to deceive people and make them work hard for him. I grew up with him doing this. After Weiwa said this, he fell silent. In his heart, his father was a complicated person. To outsiders, the old man in white robes is a hero who saved China and humanity. He struggled on the brink of life and death many times and successfully repelled the attacks of the source beasts. He founded a martial arts school, which gave many people the power to fight against the source beasts. The concept of mechanical city, he proposed, provided the last refuge for mankind. To his family, Li Ru is an extremely irresponsible husband and father. He disguised the scene of forcing his mother to death as a glorious sacrifice. He treated her strictly only because he didn't want others to think that he was a bad parent. His life was centered only on his own interests. I don't think your father is a pure hero. He once bewitched me, even. Yuan's told Weiwa some of what happened to him, which made him sigh repeatedly. Especially after hearing that his father caused Yuan's friend's family to disappear, he could no longer control his emotions. A hero in the eyes of others, a sinner in their eyes. So after you discovered your father's secret, you've been trying desperately to get rid of his control. But once you see similar abilities, you get scared, afraid of being controlled by others again, and even subconsciously regard me as an enemy. Yes, when you used that trick, your tone of voice was exactly the same as my dad's. Do you think you can't get out of this predicament? You don't even dare to kill me, who has the shadow of your father. Are you so cowardly? Yuan's questioned him with a heavier tone. Weiwa fell silent again, and Yuan's could feel the unspeakable pain deep in his heart. Have you ever thought about getting over it? Do you think that by dressing yourself up like this and having great strength you can hide your inner weakness? You are yourself, an independent individual. You should not always live in his shadow. You should have a brighter future. Weiwa thought back to the days when he was with Jinghua, and how he had been endlessly seeking that empty sense of security from her. Constantly being tortured by his father, he also tortured the heart of the one he loved, and eventually everything fell apart. The endless cycle brought about by this torture turned him from a victim to a perpetrator. By gaining power, strength, and controlling others, he seemed to think that this would reduce the risk of himself being hurt. A truly strong person will break this cycle and block all harm for others. Those who cannot get out of this cycle are not worthy of respect. Yuan's words were like a sharp knife piercing Weiwa's heart, making this so-called strong person feel ashamed. Weiwa turned around, feeling completely humiliated by what he had said. He didn't want to face Yuan's again. Alas, is it really a good idea for you to offend a Nirvana-level expert like this? He is just a little bit away from being promoted to the scout level. Astra said to Yuan's with some concern. Just wait and see. Whether he can be promoted to the Star Scout level depends on the knot I mentioned. If he can resolve this knot, he will be able to break through immediately. By then, a Star Scout level expert will owe me a favor. You can daydream quite well. Before Astra could finish her words, she realized something was wrong. Weiwa's mental electromagnetic waves were like an invisible storm, spreading outward crazily, stirring up the surrounding air. The chaotic and violent fluctuations were like the resentment that had been pent up deep in his heart for a long time, finally finding an outlet for venting. Yuanzi saw this and knew that the situation was not good. He originally wanted to observe how Weiwa would be promoted to the planetary realm, but now it seems that this promotion is not as smooth as he imagined. He made a prompt decision and turned on the diving mode. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he had already jumped into the pond beside him. On Weiwa's side, the storm of mental power became more and more intense, as if it was going to swallow up everything around it. After struggling and settling down for most of the day, the mental storm in the outside world finally subsided. The originally chaotic and disordered mental electromagnetic waves have now become stable and orderly, returning to Weiwa's body as smoothly as flowing water. Weiwa closed his eyes tightly, and carefully felt the earth-shaking changes in his body. A faint light was diffused around his body, which was one of the unique signs of promotion to the planetary realm, and also the testimony of his leap in strength. When he opened his eyes again, the light surrounding his body gradually retreated and returned to his body. Weiwa was very excited, feeling his growing strength, and his hands kept clenching and unclenching. He could clearly feel that his strength had far surpassed his father's. Years of repression and hard work finally paid off at this moment. He successfully crossed the third level, the watershed of human first-class combat power, and reached the fourth level of the scout level. Weiwa hugged Yuan's tightly, who had just emerged from the pond. Although Yuan's strength was far inferior to his, at this moment, Weiwa's gratitude and respect were beyond words. Yuan's image was so tall. Mr. Yuan, I would like to apologize for my previous offense, and I would also like to thank you very much. As he said this, he lowered his head to look at the ground, then knelt on one knee, placed his right hand on his chest, and supported the ground with his left hand. Yuan's was a little surprised. This was a courtesy of submission, an etiquette that was born after the Great Cataclysm. It was a gesture for the weak to express submission to the strong and ask for forgiveness. Not really, not really. This is all up to you. I'm just a bit of a nag. The one who achieves first comes first, Mr. Yuan. It is you who opened my eyes to the possibilities and broke the shackles that bound me for so many years. Although your strength is not as good as mine at present, your wisdom and vision make me believe that it may only take a few short years for you to surpass me. This is just my greeting in advance. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 91, The Remains of the Old Era. Still nothing was found in the past few days. Yuan's could only pack up the equipment he had put there and continue heading north to the last area where they might exist, which was one of the original human tourist destinations. When the sun shines on the island, it looks like it is surrounded by a golden halo. The seawater in contact with the beaches also dyed into a mixture of yellow and green. The surging ocean in the distance washes its deep blue into the beach. If you go further north on the island, you will reach the most dangerous core area of the FLB zone, where Cebu, the second largest city in the entire archipelago, once stood. It was also the final destination of the navigator Magellan's dream. Yuan's and Weiwa came to Bohol Island. The scenery here is still as beautiful as in the books, but there are fewer tourists coming and going. The two of them seem like uninvited guests, and a little intrusive. Yuan's kept traveling through the forest and saw the famous chocolate hills and the remains of a large number of human buildings. So many years have passed, and the area has been covered by lush tropical vegetation, and there is no way to erase the traces of human habitation here decades ago. They may lie on the wet ground in a swaying manner, or they may still stand upright, but they are all tightly wrapped in mosses and vines, wearing the green clothes given by nature. The outline of the building has become blurred due to natural erosion. Occasionally, a piece of rusty steel bar or broken glass is revealed among the ruins, like a witness of history, quietly telling the past glory and decline. Seeing this, Yuanzi's heart was filled with an inexplicable feeling of emotion. He remembered the former glory of mankind and their plunder and destruction of this planet. However, nature has infinite power. It devours everything in the past of mankind, but gives birth to newer and more powerful life. Yuanzi continued to repeat his previous work on this island, feeling a little disappointed. If they couldn't find it here either, then they would have to return empty-handed. Astra, tell me, how did the Japanese take photos of those tarsiers last time? Yuan's and Weiwa searched the equipment of those they killed and found that they had also discovered similar tarsiers here, as well as a video with detailed text records. Quote, archival record, source beast, light and shadow monkey. This is the second time it has been discovered by humans. It is an extremely rare source beast, based on the tarsier. It has a small body, long and flexible limbs, and a slender and elastic tail. The most notable feature is its huge eyes that sparkle with dazzling golden light. The specific ability is unknown, but it is related to photons and has super concealment ability. Quote, Astra changed into a swimsuit, put on sunglasses, crossed his legs, and lay in the air. Didn't the record say that? They originally wanted to capture a source beast with abilities related to photons, but they almost caught the light-eyed monkey by accident. Otherwise, why would I join the photon detection? Yuan stretched himself. Whether it was insect search or infrared camera, he still had to wait for them to operate for a while. Besides, its appearance had been recorded in the video. Astra had also simulated its possible concealment ability. He didn't have to worry at all. A few days passed like this, and Yuan's finally captured its trace with the help of instruments. Abnormal fluctuations of photons appeared in a small area. Yuanzi rushed there quickly and retrieved the data from the instrument. After Astra's analysis, he had a better understanding of the light and shadow monkey's abilities. Its entire body is covered with absorbers of photons of different energies. If all the absorbers are turned off, all visible light photons can penetrate the body, thus achieving invisibility. If the absorber is turned on, it can absorb the energy of the photon and then emit a biophoton beam through the biolaser in the eye. Although their level is very low, their stealth ability is very strong and the energy level of the photon beam is relatively high, so those insects are easily preyed upon. It's not simple yet. Yuan's turned on his enhanced vision, and this time he could see a wider spectrum of light, which means he could see more diverse colors. Soon, Yuans saw their traces, and they found that Yuans could find them easily, so they hid in the ruins of a human building. Judging from the outline and scale of this ruins, it can be roughly judged that it was a bustling shopping mall. Now, broken walls and rusty iron gates can be seen everywhere, and the hustle and bustle of the past has been replaced by the chirping of insects. These clever monkeys seem to have found a new home, and they use the remains of human buildings and the plants growing inside to reproduce and thrive there. He picked his way carefully through pieces of shattered glass and collapsed walls, weaving between the bushes in the remains of the mall. These light and shadow monkeys thrived in this ruin. Yuan's was not careless at all, but they were still able to escape his pursuit. In this way, Yuan started a fierce chase with the light and shadow monkey in this ruin, sometimes climbing the towering walls, sometimes passing through narrow gaps, and sometimes jumping into the dark basement. Finally, after countless chases, Yuan's finally realized that they seemed to be deliberately leading him in a certain direction, and he returned to search every corner of the ruins that he had left behind. Finally, behind a wall covered with vines and mosses, Yuan's found their nest. If you don't search carefully, it's hard to find its existence. Yuan's hid behind a shabby shop, wiped the dusty glass, and looked at them through the glass. Compared to the video, the eyes appear even more exaggerated in proportion to the face. Their huge eyes sparkle with dazzling golden light, like two shining gems. What troubles Yuan's is that because he wants to take the animals back for experiments, he must ensure that the captured animals are unharmed during the capture process. After some thought, Yuan's made a simple photon emission trap and a blackbody-like cage under the guidance of Astra. By manipulating the insects they love to eat to lure them into a safe source of photon signals, they then use a blackbody-like cage to directly block their ability to use photons. After the arrangement was completed, Yuan's and Astra each manipulated a small group of insects to lure them. This operation is as exciting as flying an airplane in a game, requiring players to constantly dodge the photon beam attacks from the monkey. If you are unfortunately hit, you will fall like a plane, smoking and finally being swallowed. Most of them were full and resting on the branches. The few remaining insects attracted only 2 monkeys. The 2 monkeys were very curious about the source of the photon signal in front of them and walked straight in. Yuan's quickly activated the trap mechanism, and several beams of light trapped the monkey tightly. Then the black body trap was also triggered, and together with the anesthetic, it took effect and finally caught them. You have such a strong learning ability. The source beast that trapped you last time used its ability on you once, and you were able to replicate it. Astra looked at the beam cage and thought it looked familiar, but he didn't remember it until Yuan's put away his tools. Ha ha ha, after being with me for such a long time, don't you know that my learning ability is my trump card? Yuan smiled and said, let's call it a day, let's go. If there are any shortcomings, please bear with me. I will correct them when I am better. Chapter 92 Source Core Body. How's the experiment going? After Yuan's handed the light and shadow monkey to Professor Chen, they successfully extracted a very special source power virus from it. After a period of in-depth research, the researchers have determined that this is the original form of virus X. The structure of the virus is extremely stable and will not die even after being taken out for cultivation. This allows them to run its data smoothly in virtual reality therapy. The situation is very stable, and some patients have almost recovered. We are also speeding up the development of serum. Professor Chen adjusted his glasses, but it has been delayed for quite a long time, and the mortality rate of critically ill patients has shown an upward trend again. Then I'll go see those seriously ill patients first. Professor Xu and I can't get away for now. We have a short meeting soon. You go first and we'll come after the meeting. Yuan's went straight from the laboratory to the intensive care unit of the temporary hospital in the back. Here, the only sounds he could hear were the beeping of instruments and the footsteps of doctors and nurses, and the atmosphere was unusually solemn. Most patients are placed in closed medical cabins, where various tubes and lines connect them closely to life support systems, maintaining their fragile lives. Yuanzi actually had a bold idea when he came here this time. He wanted to try out his ability of taming beasts, to see if it could work on this virus that was between life and non-life. This was not an unfounded adventure. A few days ago, in the laboratory, he had successfully established a subtle connection with the symbiotic probiotics in his body by relying on his flow introspection ability. Yuan's opened the medical cabin, took out the life resonator, and used it to sense the infected and uninfected cells. However, the difficulty of this task was almost beyond his imagination. The number of cells in the human body is extremely large, tens of trillions of cells, distributed in more than 200 different types. Each cell has its own unique life state and rhythm, some are just born, while others are about to die. However, just when Yuan's felt a little overwhelmed, Astra entered deep learning mode. With the computing power of the supercomputer and the help of the diagnostic and treatment system, it simultaneously tried multiple possible methods to distinguish these cells. What are you doing? A sudden question broke Yuan's concentration on identifying cells. He turned around and saw a doctor wrapped in a heavy chemical protective suit rushing towards him. I'm analyzing the condition, please don't disturb me. Yuan's turned his head away, not wanting his state to be interrupted, so he used his second self to talk to the doctor. The condition is so serious. Are you trying to kill him by opening the medical cabin? The doctor closed the cabin door without saying anything. As a result, data transmission suddenly became chaotic, and Astra had to urgently clear a large amount of abnormal data. Yuan's was speechless. In this situation, any doctor with basic common sense would stop him. I don't care how much authority you have. Please leave this place now. This is not a place where you can do whatever you want. The doctor frowned and wanted to drive him away. Director Wu, we know you are eager to save people, but please don't disturb him. He is Mr. Sun, and he is conducting an important experiment. Professor Xu and Professor Chen also walked into the room and explained to Director Wu. Professors, I don't care if he is called Mr. Sun or Mr. Li. How can we treat such a serious case as a joke? The patient's condition is already very unstable. Director Wu saw that the two professors stood firmly on Yuan's side, and he couldn't help but feel a little confused. He frowned and was about to speak again, but the two professors signaled him to be quiet with their eyes. They walked gently to Yuan's side and quietly observed his operation. Yuan's opened the medical cabin again and continued to collect data from every cell in his body. In order to prevent accidents as much as possible, he also asked Astra to slightly increase the efficiency of the life support system. After Astra's precise analysis and Yuan's careful exploration, he found that the special ability of Beast Tamer could not be directly applied to virus treatment. Its limit seemed to be that it could only act on prokaryotes, such as bacteria. This does not mean that their efforts were in vain. During the exploration, they captured the virus's unique, lifelike frequency, electromagnetic waves. However, due to the extremely fast mutation rate of the virus, this electromagnetic wave will produce a large number of subtypes. Just when Yuan-Zi was at a loss, another doctor appeared in the room. He walked to the two professors with a serious look and whispered a few words. Although the voice was faint, Yuan-Zi could still feel the violent fluctuations in the emotions of the two professors through the mask. "Mr. Sun, we'll be leaving now. There's an emergency. The virus has developed a strong drug resistance. If you have any findings, please send us a message in time." Yuan hummed softly and continued to concentrate on feeling the rhythm of life brought by these electromagnetic waves. Yuan-Zi recalled the wonderful process of the birth of the source core body while carefully comparing it with the records provided by Astra. Gradually, some new ideas and possibilities began to emerge in his mind. Yuan-Zi realized that the nerve cells in his body did not completely possess the source nucleus. The so-called heavy pressure should not only be limited to the physical level, but also involve the mental or physiological level. The patient in front of him had no source power in his body, so it was very easy for him to become seriously ill when facing this virus. This also explained why most source warriors only showed mild symptoms of being unable to fight, rather than severe symptoms. Yuan-Zi thought for a moment and decided to boldly try to slowly inject his own energy into the patient. However, the patient soon developed a strong rejection reaction, which was exactly the same as the symptoms Yuan-Zi had learned from the book. Despite this, Yuan-Zi did not give up. He continued to carefully manipulate the traces of source power and slowly injected it into the patient's healthy cells. At this time, he was surprised to find that the cell matrix began to merge with the source force. He sensed that the source nucleus body also appeared in the patient's cells, and its function and properties were basically the same as his source nucleus body. This discovery made Yuan-Zi suddenly realize that the so-called introduction of external cosmic energy into the body was actually a relatively crude method. The more correct way should be to form countless tiny source cores in the body to absorb and store source energy. He immediately recorded this important discovery in detail and sent it to Li Haisheng. Li Haisheng had told him that his most confidential project at the moment was to promote the research of all people source warriors. And his discovery today would surely greatly speed up the progress of this research. At the same time, he observed that the patient's vital signs had stabilized slightly and his condition seemed to be showing signs of improvement, which made Yuan feel relieved. While he was anxiously waiting for Li Haisheng's reply, the two commanders suddenly sent him a message asking him to go to the command post immediately. Chapter 93 Prison. The dim light barely shone on the aisle, making the puddles of various sizes shine brightly. One could even smell a hint of detergent mixed with rust and sweat, which was extremely depressing. Tattoo. The sound of anklets hitting the metal floor could be heard in the distance, breaking the gloom that permeated the place. Faint points of light shone through the cold iron windows, peeking into the dark corridor. Hey, there are quite a lot of newcomers during this period. I don't know where these people were sent. Shut your dog mouth, it's definitely not a good thing. Quote. Yuan-Zi heard these secret conversations. He was accused by the two commanders and then taken into custody in this internment camp where a large number of Yuan warriors were detained. His purpose is to explore an incident involving a high-level conspiracy, and the clues to this conspiracy may be hidden in the whispers of these criminals. At this moment, Yuan-Zi was wearing a standard prisoner uniform, and the heavy shackles locked his energy flow. He could only move forward slowly and arduously along the corridor. In this empty and cold environment, his footsteps echoed, clear and lonely. The guard untied the shackles indifferently, and with a gentle push, Yuan-Zi fell into the deep portal at the end that had just opened. As his eyes gradually adjusted to the dimness of the new environment, Yuan could only see the faint light coming in from outside, barely illuminating the interior of the cell. The walls were covered with graffiti and scratches, recording the anger, despair and endless boredom of the prisoners who had been imprisoned here. Yuan-Zi's eyes finally fell on the prisoner in the lower bunk. It was a burly man, curled up on the bed with his back to him, and his face could not be seen clearly. Despite this, Yuan could still feel the dangerous aura emanating from him, a unique aura that only a warrior who had experienced countless life and death battles and crawled out of a sea of corpses and blood could have. Don't provoke him. A pale face emerged in the darkness beside Yuan's. His hair was extremely sparse, with only a dozen strands remaining, scattered on his head. Why? Yuan asked knowingly. You're new here, do you know the rules? A sinister voice came from deep inside the cell, with a hint of dissatisfaction and threat. He's the boss here, don't cause trouble. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly rushed out from the darkness, trying to give Yuan-Zi a warning. However, Yuan-Zi reacted quickly and slapped him away, throwing him against the wall. The surrounding inmates exclaimed and cast surprised glances. The burly man heard the noise, turned around, propped up his head and looked at the little guy in front of him with interest, as if trying to see through Yuan-Zi's thoughts. Third brother, don't be so impulsive. A gentle voice broke the tense atmosphere, and a slightly handsome young scholar walked out of the crowd. He looked gentle and refined, with a bit of the temperament of a military advisor. The burly man nodded, agreeing with the young man's words. He also walked up to Yuan's and extended his right hand to show his friendship. His movements were graceful and unhurried, showing the demeanor of a leader. Yuanzi did not rush to shake hands, but first carefully looked at the burly man in front of him. He was the big boss in the prison recorded in the file, Han Zi. The man was at least 2.3 meters tall, with strong muscles, standing in front of Yuan's like a small mountain. There were 2 long scars on his face, extending from his eyes to his chin, intertwined, and stopping at his neck, adding a bit of hideousness to his face. Yuanzi clenched his hands with a snap, and a huge force instantly came from his hands. He instantly realized that the man in front of him was an unrivaled human master, and the Rongtong-level power he exerted was like an ant trying to shake a tree in front of his power. The man obviously underestimated Yuanzi's strength, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He found that most of his strength seemed to be removed in front of Yuanzi, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not exert his full strength. The 2 men let go of each other's hands and stared at each other, quickly judging in their hearts whether the other was a friend or an enemy. The prisoners around them could not understand what was happening, and no one dared to make a sound. The air seemed to freeze, and everyone was suffocating. "Little brother, what's your name, and why are you here?" The man broke the silence and stared at Yuanzi and asked. "Ziyuan got into a fight and killed someone by mistake." Yuanzi calmly stated his fake identity. The man felt Yuanzi's aura, which he could control with ease, and secretly admired him. Such a young man should not be underestimated no matter where he was. "Welcome here." Although the man felt that he was not telling the truth, he still gave him enough respect. "You can call me Han Zi, and you can sleep on my upper bunk from now on." After hearing this, the third brother, who had been planning to complain, immediately gave up and lay back on his bed in a huff. This sudden farce ended and the atmosphere in the cell gradually returned to calm. Although everyone returned to their respective positions, everyone couldn't help but have some murmurs and thoughts in their hearts. They were all speculating about Yuanzi's identity and strength, as well as his future position and influence in the cell. Yuanzi lay on the hard upper bunk, thinking about the scenes just now. No matter where you are, only strength can win respect. This simple truth is even more vividly reflected in the special environment of the shelter. "Yuanzi, how did you feel when you went to prison for the first time?" Astra appeared in front of Yuanzi again. It turned out that this imprisonment was a special arrangement by the 2 commanders, and the prison uniform on his body was transformed from his own battle suit. Yuanzi didn't say anything after hearing this. His thoughts drifted back to a few days ago, when he hadn't even walked out of the ward of the critically ill patient when he received a message from Commander Chen. "Sun Ziyuan, please come to the command post immediately." It turned out that after the 2 commanders sent people to search continuously, they found many suspicious points and even directly arrested many source beasts that might be lurking in human society. But they could not distinguish between the source beasts in human form and real humans. Even the life resonator could not tell the difference, not to mention the traditional blood-drawing DNA test. Commander Chu had suggested using a psychoanalyzer to forcefully extract information, but this instrument has strong side effects and is generally only used to interrogate major criminals. If it is forcibly used on ordinary people, it may cause irreversible damage. Therefore, this proposal was rejected by Commander Chen. As a result, while they were still discussing how to distinguish them, their superiors suddenly sent several specialists to take over the mission. The 2 commanders had no choice but to hand over the right to capture the humanoid monster. The 2 commanders knew that this was not a simple matter, because it was a completely opposite decision from the previous decentralization. If it were in the past, they might have chosen to protect themselves. But since meeting Yuanzi and Sun Ziyuan, Commander Chen's ideas have changed dramatically. He even transferred part of his power and persuaded Commander Chu to join the game. So they hoped that Yuanzi could play a trick with them, that is, to treat Yuanzi as a suspect, and get close to those source beasts transformed into human form to see if there was any way to find a way to identify them. Although Yuanzi felt that this was quite difficult, in a way, going to jail was also a very interesting experience, so Yuanzi readily agreed. "I hope this won't be recorded in the file. I still have business to do when the time comes." Yuanzi put on handcuffs and anklets, turned around and made a joke. "Ha ha ha, of course it won't affect the Sun family's business. As long as you act according to the plan and information, there will be no problem." The 2 commanders were also somewhat amused by Yuanzi, and a long-lost smile appeared on their faces. They nodded, asking Yuanzi to believe them. Chapter 94 Informant. In the early morning, Yuanzi woke up early as usual. However, the source power lock on his body restricted him, making the source power he could mobilize in battle very limited. He could not practice as a result, so he could only focus on planning his next move. He obtained information about the YN province shelter from the 2 commanders. This shelter was directly under the jurisdiction of China, and everything from design to construction was handled by China, so the information disclosed to the public was extremely limited. It is amazing that the entire shelter is made of an alien programmable material that can change its shape and layout at will according to needs. Each cell is more like an independent space bubble. Most of the time, no one except the prisoners and guards in the cell can set foot in it. Dozens of space bubbles form a cell area, and the prisoners in the area can enter different space bubbles at special times and with permission. In addition, there is a special area shrouded in mystery, and its purpose is elusive. According to the speculation of the two commanders, the targets being pursued are likely to be detained in this area. Because of this, according to the original plan, Yuan's urgently needed to find an informant named Zhang Zihua. Ling ring ring. The bell rang at 6:30 in the morning, and everyone got up quickly, picked up their toiletries and prepared to start a new day. While everyone was washing up, Yuan's quietly found the man who looked like a military officer. He carefully pulled the man aside, trying to avoid being seen by others, and whispered in his ear, "Commander Chen, do you know him? He asked me to find Zhang Zihua." The man was a little flustered at first, and glanced at Yuan's, looking at him very warily. Then he waved his hand to let Yuan's go away, indicating that he didn't understand what he was saying at all. But Yuan's remembered very clearly that this man with a bit of military strategist temperament was only slightly different from the photo of the informant in the information. Everyone in the area quickly finished washing up and went to the restaurant downstairs in groups of 3 or 5 to wait for breakfast. The leaders of several areas took the lead in heading to the food area. They took large portions without hesitation, not caring at all whether others would go hungry. Only the man from Yuan's area was an exception. He only took one portion of food and ate quietly at the table. Yuanzi and Zhang Zihua only delayed for a short time, and the food was already gone. They saw many other prisoners who had not received any food, like stray dogs, wagging their tails at the feet of the leaders, fawning on them. "Ahahaha, this is a reward for you." A leader who was as thin as a dead tree seemed to enjoy this feeling. He threw the food in his hand to the ground, causing the hungry prisoners to lie on the ground and scramble for it, and even lick the residue on the ground with their tongues. "Oh, there's a new guy here." A skinny leader noticed the stranger standing nearby. He jokingly poured a plate of food onto the ground and taunted Yuan's condescendingly, "Here, this is for you. You must thank me, skinny monkey." Zhang Zihua took the food from another leader who had a good relationship with his boss, with a slightly unhappy look on his face. He sat opposite the man and quietly observed Yuan's reaction. Yuan's picked up an empty plate expressionlessly, squatted down, and used his hands to scrape up the food on the ground bit by bit and put it into the plate. "Look, this is how new recruits should be trained." The skinny monkey leader opened his mouth proudly, but before he could finish his words, Yuan suddenly turned the plate in his hand upside down on his head. The restaurant suddenly fell silent. Almost all the sounds of eating stopped. The dogs begging for food looked at the newcomer in disbelief. The thin leader looked at the stain on his prison uniform in disbelief. He had never thought that a newcomer would dare to humiliate him like this. Except for that man, all the other prisoners put down their food and cast their eyes on the newcomer and the embarrassed skinny monkey. Even the guard who was maintaining order on the side stopped and leaned against the side with interest, waiting for the climax. The skinny monkey was so angry that he threw the chair to the ground. When he was about to attack, the man also finished his meal and rushed over to grab his fist. "He's mine, so stop making trouble." In this shelter, although the skinny monkey leader is also considered a small leader, his strength and reputation are obviously inferior to those of the man. The skinny monkey leader can only be considered a second-rate or even third-rate leader at best. When encountering many problems, he still needs to report to the man and seek support. The skinny monkey leader widened his eyes and looked at Yuan's and the man in disbelief, his gaze wandering between the two of them. He didn't understand how a newcomer had gotten so close to the man. But he was a small leader like this, so he was not ungrateful. He broke free from the man's hand and said, "For your sake, I'll leave it at that for now. Be more careful next time." The guards felt a little disappointed and bored when they saw the conflict was settled like this. They thought they could see a wonderful fight, but they didn't expect it to end like this. "Did I tell you to leave?" Yuan's voice echoed in the restaurant, not only stopping the skinny guy who was about to leave, but also making people who were having dinner look up again. Even the disappointed guards were attracted. Zhang Zihua even opened his mouth wide, not daring to believe Yuan's courage. "Man, he's getting ahead of me. I can't stand it." The skinny monkey rushed forward again angrily, staring at Yuan's provocatively, as if he wanted to devour him with his eyes. "I'm not sheltering a newcomer. I'm protecting you, skinny monkey," the man explained slowly. He didn't want to destroy the fragile balance in the shelter right now. The skinny monkey frowned. He couldn't believe that the man would protect a newcomer like this. Even his most trusted subordinates probably didn't receive such treatment. Not only Shohu thought so, Hanzi's words also caused an uproar in the room. No one dared to question what Hansi said. They could only look at Yuan's with an unbelievable look, wondering what ability this young man had that could make Hansi protect him so much. Then, the man whispered a few words in Yuan's ear. These words made Yuan's feel like he had heard some horrible secret, and his pupils couldn't help but shrink. Okay, I'll let Skinny Monkey go this time. Yuan's quickly regained his composure, turned his head to the left, raised his head, and told the Skinny Monkey that he would no longer care about the matter. The Skinny Monkey could only grit his teeth and leave, expressing his anger with his dragging footsteps. Then, Yuan's placed the plate of food that originally belonged to Skinny Monkey in front of those who were begging for food. You have to rely on strength to survive here, not begging. If you still have a shred of dignity, come to me. I'll make you eat while standing. After saying this, Yuan's turned and left. Those humble gazes focused on his back and gradually became hotter. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 95 Purpose. In a remote corner of the labor camp, Hansi and Yuan stood side by side, looking into the distance at the prisoners who were doing labor reform. The man suddenly turned to look at Yuan's and asked in a serious tone, "Tell me, why did you come here?" Yuanzi smiled slightly and asked, "Brother Hansi, aren't you the same? You came here to look for someone." The man was not surprised to hear this, as if he had expected Yuan's to say this. He waved his hand to signal his men to call Zhang Zihua over, intending to let the two talk face to face and resolve the contradictions in each other's hearts. Zhang Zihua had been feeling somewhat awkward and uneasy after what happened in the morning. When he saw Hanzi and Yuanzi standing together, he felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. "You two can chat. I won't get involved in this matter." Seeing this, the man stood up from the stone pier, stretched, turned around and left the corner, leaving the space to Yuan's and Zhang Zihua. Zhang Zihua looked at the man's back, then turned to look at Yuan's. His lips moved a few times but still no sound came out. He seemed to have something to hide, but he didn't know how to start. Yuan's looked at Zhang Zihua calmly, waiting for him to speak. He knew that he needed to give Zhang Zihua some time to sort out his thoughts and emotions. After the man left, Yuan's chatted with Zhang Zihua for a long time before he found out that he was Zhang Zisheng, Zhang Zihua's half-brother. The day before Yuanzi entered the shelter, Zhang Zihua was taken away by a group of people wearing special white uniforms and his whereabouts are unknown. "Do you have any evidence?" "This is his diary." Zhang Zisheng took out a diary from his belt and handed it to Yuan's. He seemed to have a premonition that he would be taken away, so he asked me to give this diary to the person who came to see him. Yuan's took the diary and quickly flipped through its contents. He then asked Astra to enter all the contents of the diary so that he could further analyze the contents of the diary. "Since we are brothers, why weren't you taken away?" Yuan's looked at him with a look that showed he didn't trust him very much. Zhang Zisheng sighed, as if he had expected Yuan's to ask such a question. He slowly opened his mouth and told a story from the past. It turned out that both of them were collateral descendants of the Zhang family. Within the family, Zhang Zihua's branch had firmly supported Zhang Zhiji to become the head of the family. However, fate played tricks on him, and Zhang Zhiji died unexpectedly while performing an important mission, and even his body could not be found. This incident caused Zhang Zihua's branch to lose its support instantly. With the death of the old patriarch, the new patriarch Zhang Zicheng came to power and launched a brutal purge against those clansmen who had supported Zhang Zhiji. Even though they were far away in Huai'an province, they were not spared. As an illegitimate child, he was not recorded in the family register. He had always lived with his mother outside the family, so he was able to survive the turmoil. It was not until shortly before the incident that his father heard about it and sent his confidant to settle him. What was even more unexpected for Zhang Zisheng was that his half-brother Zhang Zihua, whom he had never met before, heard the news from somewhere before the family change broke out, and in order to protect himself, he took the initiative to commit a crime and was taken into this shelter. In the end, only the two brothers were left in this group. Last year, his mother told him all these things before she died. She told him to avenge his father. In order to uncover the truth behind this, he decided to follow his brother Zhang Zihua's example and take the initiative to enter this deep prison. "You mentioned Commander Chen, right? He is a high-ranking figure in Huai'an province." Zhang Zisheng recalled, "My brother once mentioned that there seemed to be a secret deal between them, but I don't know the specific details." So, Yuan Zi understood what was going on when he heard this, but he deliberately didn't point it out and just lightly lured him into the trap. "So our goals are actually the same. I hope you can help me find out where my brother went, and he will tell you many secrets of this asylum." "No problem, I can help you with this, but I also have a request." After hearing this, Zhang Zisheng felt that Yuan's request was not excessive, so he agreed without hesitation and thus formed an alliance. The noon bell rang and the prisoners flocked to the mess hall. In this special place, newcomers usually receive some special care. However, when Yuan's walked to the line to get food, no one dared to embarrass him, allowing him to stand behind Shohu smoothly. Shouhu glanced back in dissatisfaction, his eyes full of dissatisfaction. Just as he was about to take the food away, a hand pressed down on his plate. One copy. You can only take one copy. At this moment, even the guards were looking at the newcomer who had just arrived for less than a day in surprise. Even if he had someone to protect him, he couldn't be so unscrupulous. They never thought about restraining the prisoners, so they naturally wouldn't stop the leaders from taking more food. Others who couldn't get enough food would naturally find ways to survive. That way they could exchange favors for what they considered scum, or find some fun in the boring guarding job, such as fighting for food. The skinny monkey frowned and threw the plate to the ground. Don't think I won't touch you just because you're protected by a man. You really think you're a big shot. I'd rather throw it away than feed it to those rubbish. After saying that, he shrugged his shoulders, pretending to be harmless, as if all the faults were on Yuan's. The younger brothers behind him saw the skinny monkey shrugged his shoulders, and they all rushed forward. Yuan's was not panicked at all, as these rabble posed no threat to him at all. No one used their energy much, and Yuan's never failed to defeat anyone in the competition of fist and foot skills. First, he aimed at the one who rushed up first. Yuan's used a whip kick to disrupt the balance of his lower body, and then punched him in the abdomen, knocking him directly away, and he fell to the ground with a large group of people. Then, Yuan's dodged the fists on both sides, grabbed their arms, and swung them out like a baseball bat, causing a mess around him. The skinny monkey felt that although Yuan's was strong, he was not as powerful as the man had revealed. He turned his head to look at the man and found that he was still eating calmly, so he prepared to find an opportunity to attack. He shook his head, throwing the residue on the ground, and then while Yuan's was still dealing with his younger brother, he quietly used the source power, wrapped his fist in a thin layer of source power, and slammed it towards Yuan's. This punch only caused a few ripples in Yuan's body energy. He threw several more punches, using all his strength in each one. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break Yuan's defense. At this moment, he finally understood what the man meant by stopping the fight to protect him. He was no match for Yuan's, and couldn't even break his defense. His strength is not enough in front of Yuan's. Yuan's performance with his younger brother just now was also pretended, in order to make him relax his vigilance and reveal his flaw. Have you had enough? It's my turn. Yuan's voice was not loud, but it scared away the other skinny brothers who wanted to fight him. They didn't even care about their meals and fled like birds and beasts. Skinny Monkey was also stunned. He didn't expect Yuan's to be so tough. He had always bullied the weak and feared the strong, but this time he finally hit a wall. He looked at Yuan's in horror and forgot to run away or beg for mercy. Yuan's didn't give him more time to think. After a few punches, the skinny monkey's face was covered in blood and he collapsed to the ground. At this time, the guards finally reacted and wanted to step forward and grab Yuan's. Yuan's was not nervous at all. He sat cross-legged on the ground, raised his hands high, indicating that he would not take any more action. His goal has been achieved, and he will be locked up in the mysterious little dark room that Zhang Zisheng mentioned. Chapter 96, Different Dimension. Yuan's was escorted by the jailers to the depths of the camp. Along the way, he witnessed many closed portals, which were not recorded in the information provided by Command Post Chen. "We're here," several prison guards reminded Yuan's. He looked up at the heavy iron door in front of him. It was full of oppression, as if even time had become slow and heavy at this moment. The mottled scratches on the iron door seemed to be silently telling the countless forgotten stories it had witnessed. This is the small dark room that Zhang Zisheng mentioned. It is said that this room contains an unfathomable mysterious power. Many Yuanwu warriors who were imprisoned here disappeared mysteriously under strict surveillance, making this place full of unspeakable legends. Faced with this bizarre phenomenon, the shelter did not conduct an in-depth investigation. Instead, it used it as a means to deter prisoners and widely publicized it within the shelter in an attempt to maintain order. Legend has it that this shelter was built on an ancient and tragic battlefield. After the mutation occurred, the strong magnetic field here actually recorded and sealed the battlefield scenes of the past, forming an intricate and different dimensional space. As soon as he entered the small dark room, Yuan's eyes were engulfed by darkness. Apart from the deep darkness, everything ceased to exist. He stretched out his hand that was attached with source power, and groped around, trying to find something to rely on, but he could touch nothing except the cold wall. He moved slowly along the wall, running his fingers across it. The rough texture became his only guide in the darkness. At this moment, Yuan's fingers touched a smooth protrusion. His heart tightened, and he immediately grabbed the object with his hand and rubbed it carefully. It was an iron ring fixed on the wall. Yuan's continued to feel along the surrounding walls, and he felt a dent like a horizontal bar nearby. As he touched other walls more carefully, more dents and bulges gradually appeared in his perception. These discoveries puzzled Yuan's. Before closing the door, he took a quick glance but did not notice the existence of these traces. Yuan's, try the Morse code. Astra's voice revealed helplessness. If this place was not under strict surveillance, she would have wanted to use other means to investigate long ago. Then I don't know what to input. Didn't you just touch some dots and lines? See if you can combine them to form meaningful information. Yuan's closed his eyes and tried to recall every detail he had touched on the wall. He reassembled the dots and lines in his mind, but the result was a bunch of random letters. Are you sure you didn't get the order wrong or miss something? No matter how I try to decrypt it, it's just a bunch of gibberish. Astra asked doubtfully. She had tried every possible combination but still couldn't get any meaningful information. It's really exhausting. If you stay in this environment for too long and do nothing, you'll go crazy. Yuan simply lay on the ground with his head in his hands. The endless darkness and silence around him continued to devour his sanity. He finally understood why so many people were unwilling to enter the small dark room. However, just as Yuan was lying on the ground and ready to give up, he suddenly felt that the ground seemed to have some faint bumps. He regained his spirits and began to feel around carefully on the ground. After some effort, he finally found some regular bumps and sent this information to Astra again. Not long after, Astra's reply came. I have interpreted it. It is invisible cracks. What do you mean? Did the invisible gap swallow those prisoners? Yuanzi was very confused and couldn't understand what the person who left the secret message meant. Astra, is there anything abnormal in the room, especially in terms of space? Astra told him that because YN01 left him a clone, many of her abilities were restricted and could not be used to their full potential. She was powerless to help Yuanzi in his current predicament and could only rely on him to figure it out slowly. Several days passed, and Astra and Yuan's finally deciphered all the text, which together meant, use mental power to sense invisible gaps. Yuan's was very confused. He had clearly spread his mental power throughout the small dark room as soon as he entered the room, but he did not sense any abnormality in this space. His mental power spread out again, covering every wall of the small dark room. He tried hard to feel and explore the mysterious gap hidden in the darkness. Although he tried his best, he still got nothing. This made him start to think about the subtle connection between mental power and space. In the concept of modern science, spiritual power is regarded as electromagnetic field. However, in the practice of Zhang family, a lot of concepts related to quantum mechanics are introduced, and it is more efficient than ordinary practice. Isn't the electromagnetic field also a quantum field? Yuanzi suddenly realized that the ups and downs of emotions might be a manifestation of quantum fluctuations. The movement of mental power through space and overcoming obstacles is similar to the phenomenon of quantum tunneling. This discovery lifted Yuanzi's spirits. He tried to adjust his emotional state and let his mental power fluctuate in a stable manner. Finally, at a certain moment, he felt the existence of the space crack. It was a gap that could not be crossed directly. It seemed to have its own life, constantly pulling at Yuanzi's mental power, trying to drag him into the endless darkness. When Yuanzi was completely swallowed up, his vision was instantly flooded by a brilliant light. The light was different from any color he was familiar with, and it intertwined and swirled, as if forming a constantly changing kaleidoscope. As his consciousness gradually stabilized, Yuanzi began to be able to distinguish the surrounding scene. He found that he was standing on a vast plain, the sky was a strange deep purple, and the stars were arranged in a complex pattern he had never seen before. The space here gave Yuanzi a sense of déjà vu, similar to the virtual space in the assessment tower. Here, Astra could exist in a physical form, and Yuanzi's mental power could extend freely without any hindrance. As Yuanzi was immersed in the exploration of this wonderful world, he gradually noticed something strange. His body began to feel uncomfortable, and the images he saw became blurry. He seemed to be in a gradually solidified space, and every breath became more and more difficult. His lungs were also tightly bound by an invisible force, preventing him from taking in more air. In a trance, a very scary fact popped into his mind. There is not a breath of air here. As his consciousness blurred, Yuanzi fell into despair. But the strong desire to survive stimulated the dormant power in his body. At this moment, his mental power surged out like a flood, instantly spreading to the entire space. This seemed to resonate with the space, and Yuanzi was gradually surrounded by air. His chest suddenly loosened, and fresh air rushed into his lungs like a tide. He coughed violently, and his body collapsed in the space. Do you want to hear my story? A vague and distant voice echoed in this space. Yuanzi struggled to support his tired body and looked in the direction of the sound. The figure in front of him gradually became clearer. It was a man who looked to be about 40 years old. Chapter 97 Redemption. After listening to the story of the nameless soul wandering in this different dimension, Yuanzi finally figured out the whole story. It turns out that the owner of this soul was once the designer of the shelter, and this shelter represents the highest level of his design career. However, in order to keep the secret here forever, the warden imprisoned him in this small dark room until the end of his life. As a top-level source warrior, he burst out with a strong desire to survive when he was on the verge of death, successfully unlocked his own gene lock, and gained the ability to create and open an alternate dimension. Unfortunately, this ability did not save his life. However, under the influence of the strong magnetic field, his soul accidentally combined with this space and remained here. This was not what he wanted. He had been longing for someone to come and help him free himself from this bondage. Therefore, he deliberately led some imprisoned people into this space. However, because their mental strength was too weak, they could not survive in this space, and even their souls could not stay. But Yuan's was the only source warrior with strong enough mental power that he had found in all these years, so he left a secret message on the wall in his blurred consciousness to guide Yuan's here. In addition, the strong desire to survive that Yuan's had just burst out completely awakened him again. It was he who opened the connection between this space and reality, allowing Yuan's to escape from suffocation. So you want me to help you get revenge on the warden? Yes, this is my last obsession. The voice of the soul revealed endless sorrow and determination. For this, I have even forgotten many things, but I will never forget this hatred. Yuanzi was silent for a moment, then he said, I can help you, but I have one condition. My spiritual power senses that this space of yours is almost completely integrated with the building. You must tell me all the structures of this building and how to enter this space. No problem. I sense that there is a room with a memory chip of mine. It contains all the design drawings. It is like a key. If you find it, you can enter this space at any time. Where are the blueprints? I can only sense that it is in a room on the second floor. You have to find the rest yourself. Yuan suddenly felt the space around him becoming restless, and a sticky force began to squeeze him. This time the time has come, I will take you out. Accompanied by a gurgling sound and a strong white light rushing from afar, Yuan's felt his body lighten and he returned to the small dark room. Dong dong dong. Yuan's heard a burst of hurried footsteps. The sound was getting closer and closer, but some of it was getting farther and farther away, accompanied by the creaking sound of a mechanical lock being unlocked. Having been in the dark for a long time, he was suddenly pierced by the bright lights. He couldn't adapt and couldn't help but cover his eyes. You're all right. You suddenly disappeared from the surveillance camera just now. I thought something happened again. Yuan still had his face covered with his hands, but his eyes had slowly opened. He looked at the guard in front of him who was gasping for breath, and his eyes moved through his fingers to another group of footsteps moving away from him. Another group of people in white uniforms escorted people wearing black hoods into the mysterious portals. The guard looked at his watch and pulled Yuanzi up. Forget it, the time in this small dark room is almost up, you can go back. Yuanzi pretended to rub his eyes, took out a source crystal and 2 unopened boxes of cigarettes from his pocket, and quickly stuffed them into the guard's pocket. Is it convenient? The guard touched the things in his pocket, felt the quality of the source crystal and the weight of the smoke, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He nodded to indicate his acquiescence. Now let's go to interrogation room number 1, and you tell us everything about the fight. The two soon arrived at the door of the interrogation room. The guard motioned for Yuan's to wait for a moment, and he walked under the surveillance camera and deliberately shook the 2 boxes of cigarettes in his hand. After making sure the surveillance was turned off, he turned and waved to Yuanzi, indicating that he could enter the interrogation room. What do you want to ask? Yuan's pulled out a stool and sat on it. He saw that the guard crossed his legs on the table to cover his face. Then a cloud of smoke floated out and soon filled the entire interrogation room. I want to know Hanzi's identity and information, as well as the distribution of power here. Yuan spoke out his doubts in one breath. Since he couldn't see the other person's face or movements, Yuan couldn't guess what he was thinking at the moment. The interrogation room fell into a brief silence, with only smoke slowly flowing in the air. Young man, your cigarettes are really good. The person on the other side suddenly laughed. There is nothing you can't answer about the questions you asked. The man's real name is. The guard told Yuan's the information he knew. The man's real name was Lu Kunhao. He was 65 years old, from GX province, and was a 9th level Yuan warrior. He was sent here in YN province because he collided with Commander Chen's subordinates and severely injured a soldier. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Yuan secretly breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that this information was exactly the same as the records in the materials. It seemed that the favor he gave to the guard was not in vain, and the guard was indeed a wise man. So he continued to listen to the guard's description of the power distribution in the shelter. Thank you. No, we can help you with many things. The guard waved his hand, saying you're welcome. Remember my number, ENG010591. Don't forget to look for me next time you have any problems. Yuan's nodded, indicating that he had memorized the guard's number. He then left the interrogation room and returned to the cell on the 2nd floor. Everyone in the cell greeted him, no longer looking indifferent. Even when Yuan's didn't respond, they all smiled and made way for him to pass by first. Thump, thump. There were bursts of sounds of things hitting the ground, and Yuan's couldn't help but turn around to look. Dozens of people lined up in a V shape outside Yuan's cell. They just lowered their heads, knelt in front of him, and said nothing, which actually seemed like they were swearing a pledge of loyalty. This scene also attracted the attention of others. Dozens of people in the shelter were considered a considerable force. Yuanzi had only been here for a few days, but he was able to have such influence. It was really amazing. Yuanzi looked at the person in the front. He remembered clearly that this person was the one who stood in the front when placing the plates before. He must be the leader. Get up, there's no point telling me. If the man doesn't agree, I won't accept you. So your first task is to prove to me that you can do this. After hearing Yuanzi's words, some people began to waver. They did not dare to face the man, so they got up and left. In the end, only 9 people were left. In fact, long before Yuanzi mentioned this task, he had already exchanged glances with the man, and the man also agreed with Yuanzi's behavior. This was just a test. What's your name? Yuanzi squatted down and looked at the man in front of him whose eyebrows were like scimitars drawn from their sheaths. He raised his head and looked into Yuanzi's eyes. Master Z, my name is Wu Bangji. Okay. Then let them and you complete what I said first, and I will naturally accept you when the time comes. No problem. His tone was very resolute, as if he was leaving no room for retreat. Chapter 98 Important Information. Yuanzi woke up before the bell rang again. He looked at the ceiling, thinking about his experiences over the past few days. He still had very few clues and felt a little anxious. What made him even more uneasy was that he knew nothing about the latest developments of the epidemic. Recalling the last communication with the 2 doctors, their emotions indicated that the epidemic had worsened again. This uncertainty made Yuanzi realize that he must obtain effective information as soon as possible. Yuanzi took a deep breath, then exhaled, trying to calm his inner anxiety. He understood that the biggest problem at the moment was the memory chip that the engineer's soul mentioned. If you can get it, it is equivalent to gaining the right to move in the other dimensional space that fills the entire shelter. You can move freely without having to go to great lengths to find those mysterious portals. Prisoner number 011356, please go to the meeting room. Chen Weilong is visiting you. This message suddenly popped up on Yuanzi's bracelet, interrupting his thoughts. He immediately jumped out of bed, quickly tidied up his appearance, and then hurried to the meeting room, hoping that Commander Chen could bring him some useful information during this meeting. When he arrived at the door of the meeting room, he saw a familiar figure, guard number 0591. He stood guard at the door and flashed his bracelet. The bracelet was displaying the notification message just now. It was obvious that he had received and conveyed the message on behalf of Yuanzi. He also got the bracelet from Commander Chen on behalf of Yuanzi. Yuanzi turned to the blind spot of the surveillance behind him, stuffed the things into his pocket, and smiled at him, same old. He nodded and told Yuanzi to go in without worry. The surveillance had been turned off and he would also stand guard here. You are really capable, kid. You have only been here for a few days, but it seems like you have figured this place out. As Yuanzi closed the door, a strange voice but a familiar accent came over. Chen Weilong, no way. These are just the basic skills of being a human being. You might be better than me. According to the previous plan, he called Commander Chen Weilong to keep it secret. Haha, okay, let's not talk about this. Commander Chen smiled and waved his hand, then suddenly stopped smiling and said in a low voice, this time, we found a very important clue. Commander Chen paused, and subconsciously observed his surroundings to make sure there was nothing unusual. Then he slowly spoke, the designer of this building is Lu Guangyi. He and Lu Cunhao are brothers. Yuanzi's heart trembled, and he blurted out words that directly interrupted Commander Chen. No, they are father and son. Commander Chen shook his head. But it seems that you also know something. Tell me first, and I can give you some advice. Yuanzi then told Commander Chen in detail about his investigation experience over the past few days, and also informed Commander Chen of the plan of Lu Cunhao so that he could make a comprehensive judgment. Commander Chen frowned, bit his lower lip gently, and entered a state of thinking. After a while, his brows relaxed and a smile appeared on his face. Why does it feel like there's a problem wherever you go? He said half-jokingly, trying to ease the tense atmosphere. Oh, I'll go wherever there's a problem. I'm definitely a firefighter. You're right. Commander Chen nodded. Then you should put Lu Zihua aside for now and work with Lu Cunhao first. From what you said, he appreciates you and even allowed you to recruit some followers. Yeah, I understand. Afterwards, they talked about the epidemic situation in YN01 Mechanical City. Although some drugs were developed using the original virus of the monkey, they only treated the symptoms and not the root cause, and the situation has begun to deteriorate again recently. However, Commander Chen heard that the critically ill patient previously treated by Yuanzi had improved and was now classified by Professor Chen as a special case test area, and was also classified as top secret by the Haisheng group. Soon, Li Haisheng will come here in person. The two commanders speculated that this might be related to some special treatment or medicine, and that results would be forthcoming soon. They asked Yuan-Zi not to worry and to investigate the situation in the shelter carefully. The focus of the plan was also adjusted, and all targets were shifted to another crucial person. Yuan-Zi came out of the meeting room, and 0591 smiled and nodded at him, making a very respectful gesture of seeing him off. He knew in his heart that the key next step would be how to communicate with the man, Lu Kunhao. After all, he condoned his activities in the shelter, and there must be a deeper meaning behind it. Who took my things? Just as Yuan's was wandering outside the cell thinking, a deafening roar suddenly rang out. The sound was so loud that the guards around were attracted. They looked at the door, pouted, and left as if nothing had happened. Yuan-Zi also put aside his thoughts and leaned over to see that it was the man's roar. His angry expression made the others around him retreat. Second floor. Father and son. Chip. He immediately understood that the memory chip must be what the man had put in his clothes. It was the last thing his son had left him, and now it had been taken away by the guy. Man, let me help you look for it. I want to see which blind person took your things. After hearing what Yuan said, the man felt that he had lost his composure and walked back to the bed in a daze. Yuan's immediately activated his mind flow ability, organizing it into a mind net-like ability that could monitor other people's vague thoughts for a short period of time but over a large area. The information is very confusing, but with Astra helping to filter it, the job is much easier. His eyes swept across all the space bubbles in the area. Some people shrank into the corner in fear, not daring to meet Yuan's gaze. Humph. Information flooded in, but with the help of Astra, Yuan's was able to easily filter out the useful parts. His sharp eyes swept across all the space bubbles in the area, causing some people to hide in the corners in fear, not daring to look him in the eye. Suddenly, Yuan's found his target, a guard who was searching for items. It was this person who took the man's things. Yuan's did not act rashly because he knew the identity of this man. This warden is the real boss here, a Nirvana-level source warrior who once served as deputy commander of YN province. No wonder the other guards just glanced at him. With the source power blocked, Yuan-Zi naturally couldn't confront him head-on, so he needed to wait for an opportunity. The moment the warden's pocket brushed against the wall, Yuan's mental power left in the alien space quickly took action and stole the storage chip into the alien space. Then he turned and walked to the blind spot of his vision, flashing through the real space. After a while, the warden realized that the things he had confiscated were missing. He searched the area where the man was in a rage but found nothing. The man looked at him coldly, knowing that this was a clue given to him by Yuan-Zi. Although Yuan-Zi didn't say anything, he had already told him with his actions. Chapter 99 Purgatory on Earth. Yuan-Zi used the memory chip he got and came to the realm of the other dimension again. Under the guidance of Lu Guangyi's soul, he gradually mastered the tricks of survival in this mysterious space. He closed his eyes and let his mental power wander through this vast space. Countless information about the shelter flowed into Yuan's mind like a trickle of water. Fortunately, Yuan's had experienced the baptism of the Tower of Knowledge, which enabled him to absorb this information quickly and efficiently. Lu Guangyi watched Yuan-Zi gradually adapt to the environment of this space, and his heart was filled with excitement and anticipation. Although he was gradually losing control of this space, he seemed to have foreseen the scene of his revenge. When Yuan-Zi slowly opened his eyes, he felt that his mental power had merged with this space. At this moment, he was like the master of this space, controlling everything here. He watched Lu Guangyi's gradually disappearing figure, and endless emotion welled up in his heart. Your father has also gone deep into this place for investigation. Don't worry, we will avenge you. Hearing this, Lu Guangyi's soul couldn't help but shed tears of gratitude. His figure gradually blurred in the tears, and finally turned into a wisp of light smoke, gradually dissipating in the endless different dimensional space. Suddenly, Yuan's felt something in his pocket move. He took it out and found that it was the tears of Rubius, left by the AI of the fifth assessment tower when it disappeared. At this moment, it was emitting a dazzling light. This mysterious crystal seemed to be gradually stabilizing Lu Guangyi's soul. When the soul was completely stabilized, the crystal slowly absorbed it. Astra, what's going on? You asked me, after the last transformation of the tower, you didn't even let me take a look at this strange substance. However, seeing that this tear had no reaction again, Yuan's could only put it away and wait for a chance to see what secrets it was hiding in the future. Astra materialized in this environment, cruising in front, leading Yuan's toward the abnormal point he sensed. A distorted and deformed scene of hell was reflected in Yuan's pupils. The interrogation room turned into the entrance to the underworld. The guards were not humans but demons covered in human skins. Their every move revealed evil and distortion. The long whip twisted in their hands like a living snake. Every lash drew black cracks in the air, fiercely tearing the soul and body of the inmate. The inmates, groans condensed into mournful ghost sounds in the air, echoing in every corner of the interrogation room. The guards laughed grimly and poured boiling water on the inmates like a sacrifice. The inmates' skin melted instantly, emitting balls of green flames, and the air was filled with a burnt and fishy smell. The smell of burning and blood on the inmates was intertwined, making people shudder. The ones who sent them in were the so-called leaders of each area, and some of them even participated in the inhumane torture. The skinny monkey tied his disobedient younger brother to an iron rack and roasted his body over a raging fire. The younger brother's skin melted little by little in the flames, but his eyes were fixed on the skinny monkey, as if he wanted to drag his soul into hell as well. The most heartbreaking thing is that due to the special physique of the Source warriors, their source power is limited to the extent that it can only barely heal the wounds. Whenever the wounds heal, all the pain and scars seem to have never existed. These strange scenes made Yuan's feel palpitations. He began to doubt whether he was still in the human world, or had fallen into some indescribable world of horror. Yuan's began to understand why those people were begging for food on the ground and why they did not have the courage to ask Hanzi for help. They were afraid that the big boss was also such a person. Astra, record all of this. I want to make everything here public. He continued to move forward. He first had to find those potential, source beasts, who were imprisoned. But a scene that Yuanzi could not accept appeared. It was far more terrifying than what the man had told him. In the laboratories behind the portals, the broken limbs were scattered everywhere like the parts of discarded dolls, tangled together like branches, blood was mottled, some had dried into black and red patches, and some were still flowing slowly. Groups of people in white uniforms looked like messengers from hell, their bodies covered in blood, with twisted smiles on their stiff faces. The butcher knives in their hands flashed with cold light. If you look closely, the cold light also reflects the bloodstains and broken limbs beside them. Astra maintained the calmness that is unique to artificial intelligence and began to interpret the disordered logic behind it. These people in white were looking for signs of some kind of abnormality to determine whether their experimental subjects were source beasts. The powerful regeneration ability of source beasts became the key to their identification. Ordinary people who have no regenerative abilities are thrown into a petri dish that is like a boiling pot, in which a mysterious juice flows that promotes the recovery of the remaining limbs. They suffered in it until their limbs regenerated. Afterwards, these lives that were repaired by mysterious power were picked up and sent to a forgotten workshop like waste. There, their memories were cruelly stripped away, and all the painful and unbearable past was erased. In the end, they were like dull puppets, losing their former souls and selves, and were hypocritically sent into the abyss of the sanatorium. This is horrible. Are humans consumables? If we treat them like this, what's the point of identifying the source beasts? Yuan's remembered that Commander Chen was reluctant to use the psychoanalyzer on ordinary people. But here, people treated these inmates like animals. Do you feel that they adopted this rough method in order to greatly improve the efficiency of handling? They seem to want to resolve this incident quickly, which is completely different from the working style of the group behind Yang Ziqi and Chen Zhui. Yuan's nodded. He had just thought of this point. There might be complicated struggles and conflicts of interest behind this. Astra, do you think that what we experienced before is related to this place? Especially the symptoms of post-return consciousness disorder. Maybe. I felt it too, but the disappearances in Province S and what's happening here are two different things. Astra replied, then gestured to move on. The two finally arrived at their destination and met Zhang Zihua, who was familiar but had never met before. He was imprisoned in a secret room in the warden's room and suffered inhumane torture. Compared with others, the warden's methods were more cruel, and even revealed a sense of deliberate revenge. He suddenly put down the torture instrument in his hand, raised his head, seemed to have sensed something unusual, and glanced suspiciously at the strange space above, where Yuan's was hiding. This alien space is indeed very secretive, and even a Nirvana-level strongman cannot peek into it. The warden looked carefully for a long time, but finally gave up and turned around to continue to torture Zhang Zihua. I let you escape to my place and you almost killed me. Humph, in a few days, the Zhang family will ask me to hand you over. I wonder how you can survive like this. The warden whipped him again, leaving him with skin torn and blood gushing out. Yuanzi witnessed all this, and his heart became somewhat numb. He found a relatively safe surveillance blind spot and carefully got out of the alien space. Chapter 100 The Truth. Yuan's flew backwards. He got up from the ground and saw that the scar on the man's face had turned red due to anger, twisted and hideous, like two flames stirring on his face, and his eyes were wide open and full of rage. The man still held on to a glimmer of hope, but the news of Lu Guangyi's death was like a sharp knife that pierced his heart deeply. A sharp pain came over him, and that pain was not only a pain in his heart but also a tremor in his soul. The angry aura continued to surge out from the man, forming an invisible storm that made people afraid to approach easily. However, amid the frightened gazes of the crowd, Yuan's resolutely walked towards the man again. Yuan stayed by the man's side, using his mental power to dispel his anger and violence bit by bit. I can help you get revenge. Yuan saw that his spirit was gradually weakening, and made a solemn promise to him in his ear. Commander Chen, I can help you with that. The man turned his head and stared at Yuan's. He knew that this kid had a big backer behind him. But the most important thing was that his ability was fully online. In just a few days, he had already turned the place upside down. Although on the surface he only recruited a group of younger brothers, he secretly completely destroyed the rules that had been in place here for so many years. Although he was respected as the big boss by other bosses, he always kept a low profile and was cautious, rarely intervening in other people's affairs directly. However, now he had to re-examine the young man in front of him. What are your conditions? Yuan's did not respond immediately, but slowly stood up and stretched his muscles, making crisp crackling sounds. I saw. After the man heard Yuan's whisper in his ear, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. He couldn't believe that he had found out so much evidence about the detention center in such a short time. In comparison, what he had told Yuanzi before were just some trivial revelations, not worth mentioning at all, so he was very skeptical about the authenticity of the evidence in Yuanzi's mouth. Look at this. The man looked at the compressed and blurry video in front of him and couldn't help but take a breath. Those scenes that shouldn't have appeared here were clearly presented in front of him. You understand what I'm going to do, right? But this place is not something you can shake by yourself. I have been lurking here for so long, and I am gradually losing hope. The man seemed a little frustrated. Sometimes the more you know, the less likely it is to be realized. He even suspected that the warden had long seen through their identities and had been deliberately targeting him. The more low-key he was, the more suspicious the warden became and the more he wanted to find fault with him. So what? You are a 1 in a million level origin warrior. I have always admired you. Just like your nickname, I respect you as a man, but now it seems that you are not as good as me. Did you know? Yuanzi didn't want to listen to his speech. Before leaving, he said coldly, so-called men are nothing but cowards. Lu Kunhao was drained of all his strength in an instant and collapsed on the bed. He covered his eyes with one hand, tears quietly sliding down through his fingers. I was once a soldier who fought in battle, so why? Why was this happening? Why couldn't I even protect my son? Lu Zisheng was doing manual work in the workshop. I found your brother. Yuan sat down on the stool next to him and started doing his handicraft as if nothing had happened, and said something to him in passing. Ding! Lu Zisheng's tool slipped from his hands, and his hands trembled slightly. He tried his best to calm himself down, but his voice still trembled a little bit. Where is it? Why don't you ask me if it's true? I believe you. Then you trust the right person. Yuan's didn't beat around the bush anymore. As far as Lu Zisheng was concerned, he just needed to tell him about the warden. Lu Zisheng listened very seriously, and what Yuan's didn't expect was that he actually rushed to the warden to ask for an explanation, which was completely opposite to the behavior of a man. Why are you so anxious? You trust me, right? I have some arrangements here. Seeing that he was no longer impulsive, Yuan's picked up the tools on the ground and put them on the table. Lu Zisheng had indeed calmed down at this time, with a hint of expectation in his eyes, as if he was looking at a savior. Yuan's responded with an encouraging smile, but his heart was filled with many emotions. The man who appeared tough and was quite friendly to him at the beginning, ultimately failed to fully trust him, whereas this young man who looked a little thin and even somewhat dismissive of him at first, supported him so firmly. Yuan stood up, used his mental power to lift the handicraft with 2 words sewn on it and put it into Lu Zisheng's pocket, ready to leave. Unexpectedly, he ran into the skinny monkey head-on, with a man behind him, who looked like a fox taking advantage of the power of another. Yuan's also shook his head. Did the man not think clearly and come here to target him? Hey, kid, I heard that you made our eldest brother unhappy. I'm going to seek justice for him today. The skinny monkey pouted his head and looked at Yuan's arrogantly. A defeated general, don't you think the last defeat was not bad enough? He did not mention the man. In his eyes, a strong man, who had lost his spirit was no better than a gangster who was always stirring up trouble. The man noticed the hidden meaning of this sentence, and it hurt his heart. He wanted to prove that he was not a coward, and started by doing what he thought was right. The strong would not care about the eyes of others. PFF'd. In full view of everyone, the man actually knelt down. Everyone widened their eyes and rubbed them with their hands, unable to believe what they saw. At this moment, an extremely powerful aura began to surge from the man's body, rising steadily. His spirit had undergone a qualitative change due to the change in his thinking, and the bottleneck of the top level had begun to loosen. Master Z, I'm sorry, I was blind. As the words came into his mouth, the powerful force in his body surged out like a flood, completely breaking through the bottleneck that had troubled him for many years. A powerful aura spread out from him in all directions. People in the distance seemed to feel the invisible oppression and bent down one after another. Only Yuan stood in front of him like a vigorous old pine tree. He was already used to this kind of scene, where masters would always make breakthroughs inexplicably in front of him. Although the cultivation of source power is restricted here, the man's information shows that he has a very special gene lock ability. This is why even the guards dare not provoke him in prison. This ability is called absolute source tyrant body. Any source power he absorbs cannot be stored at all, but the source power that disappears in his body will greatly strengthen his body, allowing him to gain strength and speed that surpass most source warriors. At the beginning, Yuan's read his information and felt that this was more like an innate physique and bloodline. It was a pity that it was not passed on to his son, otherwise his son might have had a chance of survival. When everyone recovered from their shock, they found that Yuan's and the man had left. All that was left was a skinny monkey on the ground, bleeding from all 7 orifices. It looked like he looked so bad that even a god would have been unable to save him. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.